Good evening, listeners. Welcome to Noir Intellect. I'm your host, Victor Blackwood. If you enjoy mysteries, hidden clues, and uncovering the truth, don't forget to like and subscribe. And tell me, where in the world are you watching from? Leave it in the comments below. Now, keep your eyes open and your mind sharp. The mystery begins now. Chapter 1. The note that knew too much. The sentence predicted a death. The second supplied the address. The third told us when the screaming would begin. I had read worse things before breakfast, but not many. The note arrived at 11:20 on a wet Thursday morning in the hand of Samuel Kent, who looked as if he had spent the night arguing with his nerves and lost. He was a narrow man of 50, with thinning brown hair, damp shoulders, and the pale, strained face of someone who had discovered that imagination was more dangerous than fact. I let him into the old brownstone on West 35th Street, took his coat, and guided him into the office. Nero Wolfe was upstairs in the plant rooms, where 10,000 orchids received more kindness before noon than most human beings earned in a lifetime. Kent remained standing. "I must see Mr. Wolfe immediately." Immediately is a difficult hour for him. This concerns a murder. Committed or proposed? He swallowed. Predicted. That earned him the red leather chair. I sat at my desk and gave him a chance to arrange his breathing. Rain tapped the windows. Somewhere beyond the office wall, Fritz was preparing lunch, and the smell of roasting onions suggested that civilization had not entirely collapsed. "What kind of prediction?" I asked. Kent reached inside his coat, then remembered I had taken it. He looked toward the hall. "My inner pocket." I retrieved the coat and brought it to him. He removed a cream-colored envelope and held it by the edges. "This came to my office yesterday afternoon." "By mail?" "No. It was inside a manuscript." "What manuscript?" "A crime novel submitted for publication." That improved matters. Samuel Kent was the managing director of Kent and Barrow, a respectable publishing firm with offices near Madison Square. He handled business affairs, selected some manuscripts himself, and had the professional expression of a man who had been disappointed by thousands of first chapters. He placed the envelope on my desk. The address had been written by hand. Samuel Kent Private, no stamp, no postmark. "Who delivered the manuscript?" I asked. "I don't know. It was found in the afternoon submissions." "Author's name?" "Alan Moore." "Real?" "Probably not." There was no return address. I opened the envelope with my letter knife and removed one sheet of white paper. The handwriting was neat, upright, and without any visible hurry. "Victor Harper will die at the Fairmont Charity Gala on Friday evening. At approximately 10:15, he will fall from the west balcony above the ballroom. The lights will fail seconds before his death. Guests will rush toward the main staircase while the orchestra continues playing in confusion. The death will be called an accident. It will not be one." I read it twice. Kent watched me. "Now you understand." "I understand the words." "That is not always the same thing. The Fairmont Gala is tomorrow night. Victor Harper is attending. How public is that information?" "The newspapers have printed the guest list. And the balcony." "The Fairmont is well known." Kent leaned forward. "But the time, the lights, the orchestra, the confusion. Those details are not a vague warning. They describe an event that has not happened yet." The elevator hummed in the hall. At 11:30 exactly, Wolfe entered the office. He wore a dark brown suit and a yellow shirt, and his expression suggested that the human race had again interrupted something more valuable. I introduced Samuel Kent and handed Wolfe the note. He read it, placed it on his desk, and looked at Kent. "Who dislikes Mr. Harper?" Kent blinked. "I came because of the note." "The note concerns Mr. Harper." "Answer. Many people dislike him. Why?" "Victor Harper is chairman of Harper Consolidated. Shipping, construction, manufacturing, property. He is forceful and successful." Wolfe made a face. "Those are funeral words." "What has he done?" Kent hesitated. "He has destroyed competitors. He has dismissed employees without mercy. He has been accused of bribery, though nothing was proved. He recently defeated a group of shareholders, attempting to remove him." "Are you acquainted with him?" "Yes." "How?" Kent looked uncomfortable. "My firm is publishing his memoir." That explained why the note had gone to him. "Who knows that?" Wolfe asked. "The arrangement was announced last month." "Who is writing the book?" Harper claims to be writing it himself. In fact, most of the work is being done by Laura Bell, a professional writer.
Who has the manuscript?
My editor, Peter Grant, Miss Bell. Harper's attorney, Charles Mason. His daughter, Evelyn Harper. Possibly Richard Cole, a junior executive at Harper Consolidated. Does the manuscript contain threats, accusations, or secrets? It contains all three. Wolfe leaned back. Then notify Mr. Harper and the police. I notified Harper last night. He laughed. And the police? He forbade me to call them. His publicity would make him appear frightened. That is his privilege. Kent stared. You will do nothing. What do you propose? Attend the gala? Prevent the death? Wolfe's eyes narrowed. You ask me to spend an evening in a crowded country house protecting a man who refuses protection because an anonymous writer has described a melodrama. I will pay your fee. Money cannot make a ballroom empty, I said. It can make me enter one. Wolfe ignored that. Kent reached for the note. I thought you would see what this means. It means the writer wishes you to believe he possesses knowledge of a future event. There are two ordinary explanations. He intends to cause the event, or he expects nothing to happen and wants to frighten you. Neither requires prophecy. The details are exact. They are proposed details. Accuracy can be judged only afterward. Kent stood, and if afterward is too late, Wolfe's lips tightened. He disliked emotional arguments, especially when they were reasonable. Archie, he said, telephone Inspector Kramer. Give him the substance of the note. Mr. Kent will leave the original here. Kent objected, but Wolfe ended the matter by closing his eyes. I called Kramer. His response contained several observations about anonymous warnings and wealthy men who refused police advice. He sent Sergeant Pearlie Stebbins to collect a copy and promised that Harper Hall would receive discreet attention. Kent left after paying a consultation fee that Wolfe had not earned but accepted without visible shame. The next evening I wore a dinner jacket and drove to Harper Hall. Wolfe stayed home. He said, the police had been warned, the threatened man had been warned, and my presence was an unnecessary concession to Kent's anxiety. I said concessions looked better in a dinner jacket. He told me not to drink anything served from a tray. The Fairmont Medical Foundation Charity Gala occupied the ballroom at Harper Hall, a large gold and white room designed to make money feel respectable. 200 guests circulated beneath crystal lights. An orchestra played near the east wall. Above the ballroom, a narrow west balcony connected two private reception rooms. Victor Harper arrived at 9:12. He was 60, tall, silver-haired, and built like a man who regarded chairs as temporary inconveniences. His daughter Evelyn accompanied him. She was around 30, dark-haired and controlled. Richard Cole, a junior executive at Harper Consolidated, stayed close to his left shoulder. Laura Bell, the writer preparing his memoir, followed with Charles Mason, the attorney. I saw Inspector Kramer near the main staircase, pretending not to inspect anything. Pearlie Stebbins stood beside a column, looking like a banker who had misplaced his bank. At 9:30, I introduced myself to Harper. He studied me. Wolfe sent a secretary. He sent the part of the business that travels. I told Kent the note was rubbish. Then you should enjoy proving it. Harper glanced toward the balcony. I have received threats for 20 years. Have any supplied an appointment? This one will be disappointed. He walked away before I could ask who knew his plans for the evening. At 9:45, Harper spoke from the platform about hospitals, duty, and the moral obligations of wealth. The audience listened respectfully because he had donated $50,000 and because dinner was not yet served. Afterward, I spoke with Laura Bell. She was in her late 30s, quiet, observant, and wore a green dress without jewelry. Did the memoir make anyone nervous? I asked. Everyone in it. Specific names? Richard Cole, Charles Mason, several former employees. Even Evelyn. Why Evelyn? Harper intended to discuss her mother's death and a trust he had controlled since then. Did Harper write that part? No. He dictated it. Who typed the drafts? I did. Who saw them? Harper, Mason, and Kent's editor. At 10:05, Charles Mason approached and asked Laura to join Harper in the west reception room. They went upstairs together. At 10:08, Richard Cole followed. At 10:10, Evelyn Harper crossed the ballroom toward the main staircase. but was stopped by a photographer. I checked my watch. At 10:12, Harper appeared alone on the west balcony. He stood at the railing, looking down at the ballroom. The orchestra had begun a slow number. Kramer saw him too, and moved toward the staircase. At 10:14, the lights went out. The darkness lasted perhaps 4 seconds. A woman screamed before the lights returned. Then came a heavy crash from the west side of the ballroom. Victor Harper lay on the polished floor beneath the balcony. For 1 second, the crowd held still. Then the note took control of the room. Guests rushed toward the main staircase. Chairs overturned. Someone shouted for a doctor. The orchestra continued playing for several confused measures because its conductor could not see what had happened. It was exactly as written. Kramer reached the body first. I went to the balcony stairs. Pearlie followed. The west reception room was empty. One door opened onto the balcony. Another led to a service corridor. On the carpet near the balcony entrance lay a broken cuff link. The window curtains moved slightly, though the windows were closed. I stepped onto the balcony and examined the railing. No broken wood, no obvious sign of a struggle. Near the base of the rail, caught against a brass fitting, was a thin strand of black cord. Pearlie said, "Do not touch it." I was admiring it. Below us, the doctor rose from Harper's body and shook his head. Kramer came upstairs. "You saw him fall?" he asked. "No. The lights failed." "Who came up here?" "Harper, Mason, Laura Bell, and Richard Cole." Mason and Bell came down before 10:12 and remained visible near the foot of the staircase. I did not see Cole return. Kramer looked toward the service corridor. "Find him?" "We found Richard Cole in a ground-floor cloakroom, washing blood from his right hand. He said he had cut it while clearing broken glass from Evelyn Harper's path during the confusion." A waiter later confirmed his account. Kramer took him upstairs. At 10:40, while police questioned witnesses and household staff inspected the electrical system, I telephoned Wolfe. He answered after the second ring. "Report." The note was correct. 10:15, west balcony, lights out, orchestra playing, crowd at the staircase. Harper fell and died. Silence. Then Wolfe asked, "Did the sights fail throughout the house?" "Only the ballroom and west reception rooms. Cause, unknown." "Was Mr. Harper alone on the balcony?" "Apparently." "Cole's movements are uncertain." Mason and Laura Bell had been upstairs. Evelyn was below. The note. It predicted everything. No, it described everything. I leaned against the telephone shelf. That distinction feels thin from here. It is the entire case. Prediction requires knowledge of the future. Description requires knowledge of a plan. So the writer planned the murder, perhaps. Or the writer knew another person's plan. Kramer entered the hall and held out his hand for the telephone. "Wolfe?" he demanded. "Yes." He took the receiver. "This is Kramer. Harper's dead. The balcony rail has been treated with oil. The lights were cut from a service panel, and someone tied black cord across the balcony entrance at ankle height. He tripped, struck the rail, and went over." Kramer listened. "No, it was not an accident." He listened again and scowled. "What do you mean? When was the note written?" That was a good question. Kent had said it arrived Thursday, inside an anonymous manuscript. But the note itself carried no date, no envelope mark, and no proof of when it had been written. Wolfe spoke long enough for Kramer's scowl to deepen. Then Kramer handed the receiver back to me. "Wolfe wants Kent at the brownstone tonight. At this hour? He says bring him." Wolfe came back on the line. "Archie, learn who knew the ballroom lighting system, who knew Harper would use the west reception room, and who supplied the orchestra's program. Anything else?" "Yes. Guard the note. It is in your safe. Then guard the person who brought it." I looked across the ballroom. Samuel Kent stood near the entrance, pale and motionless, staring at Harper's body. He had not been on the original guest list. I said. Another silence. "Did he tell you he would attend?" "No. Bring him." Wolfe hung up. Across the ballroom, Kent saw me watching him. His right hand slipped inside his coat. For a moment, I thought he might be reaching for a weapon. He removed a folded sheet of paper instead. When I reached him, he gave it to me without a word. It was another handwritten note. "The first death will appear accidental. The second will occur after the police believe they understand the first." This time, no location or hour was given, only a promise. The note had known too much once. Now it expected another chance. Chapter 2. The Gala Tragedy. A dead man can change his manner of dying without moving an inch. At 10:15 on Friday night, Victor Harper had appeared to fall from the west balcony during a failure of the lights. By 8 the next morning, the newspapers had softened it into a collapse near the grand staircase. By noon, the medical examiner was prepared to say that neither description contained the important part. Victor Harper had been poisoned. Inspector Kramer delivered the news by telephone while I was finishing coffee in the kitchen. Wolfe had already gone upstairs to the plant rooms, where no death, however complicated, was permitted to disturb the morning schedule. "Get out to Harper Hall," Kramer said. "I was there until 2 this morning. Then you know the road. I also know the location of my bed. The laboratory found aconitine in Harper's blood. That improved my attention." "The same poison used in the previous suitcase case?" I asked. "This is not a previous suitcase case. Stop arranging murders by category." I only asked. "You can ask the suspect. Harper Hall at 1. He hung up. Fritz put another slice of toast on my plate. "Mr. Wolfe will wish to know." "He will wish to know at 11. Fritz glanced toward the ceiling. "He may wish to know sooner." That was true. Wolfe resented having his schedule disturbed, but he resented being the last man in the house to know something even more. I used the house telephone to call the plant rooms. Theodore Horstman answered and informed me that Wolfe was occupied with a group of Miltonia hybrids. "Tell him toxicology found aconitine in Victor Harper." There was a pause. Then Wolfe's voice came on. "Where? In his blood. Do not be flippant. I thought the question was geographical. Was it in the mineral water food or another substance?" Crane did not say. "Then learn. Also determine whether the poison was administered before or during the gala." "I am going to Harper Hall." "Why?" "'Cause Kramer told me to." "Phooey." "Go because I have told you." He disconnected. Harper Hall stood beyond the northern edge of the city, on 30 acres of winter bare ground. The newspapers called the event the Fairmont Charity Gala because the Fairmont Medical Foundation had sponsored it. But the actual reception had taken place in Harper's estate. The house had been built by his grandfather, who had apparently believed that wealth should be visible from several miles away. Grey stone walls rose behind iron gates. Tall windows faced a circular drive, and stone lions guarded the entrance with the bored expressions of old servants. The ballroom occupied the western wing. A wide staircase descended from an upper gallery to the main floor. The balcony from which Harper had fallen opened above the staircase landing, so witnesses below had described the event as a collapse near the stairs. That was accurate enough for newspapers and useless to anyone interested in murder. A patrolman admitted me. Kramer was in the ballroom with Sergeant Pearlie Stebbins, a medical examiner named Dr. Howard, and 3 technicians examining the railing, carpet, and electrical panel. The room looked less charitable in daylight. Chairs had been pushed against the walls. Broken glass glittered beneath one table. The orchestra platform stood empty. A dark mark on the polished floor showed where Victor Harper's head had struck. Kramer looked at his watch. "You're late. I came from Manhattan. The subway does not reach the front lawn." He handed me a laboratory report. The poison was aconitine, a substance that could produce numbness, weakness, irregular heartbeat, confusion, and collapse. Harper had received a heavy dose, but not necessarily enough to kill him immediately. The fall had caused severe injuries, though Dr. Howard believed the poison would probably have killed him within minutes even if he had remained upstairs. "So the cord did not kill him," I said. "It helped," Kramer replied. The black cord stretched across the balcony entrance had tripped Harper as the poison weakened him. He had stumbled against the railing and gone over during the 4 seconds of darkness. "That makes the prediction even better," I said. Kramer's face tightened. "Notes do not predict." Wolfe said the same thing. "That is no reason for you to enjoy it." Dr. Howard joined us. "The poison entered orally," he said. "Probably in liquid. There was no injection to mark and no residue on the skin." "What did Harper drink?" I asked. "Mineral water, whiskey, and champagne, according to witnesses." 3 drinks? "Not necessarily all at once." Kramer pointed toward a side room. "We found the glass from the balcony. Mineral water with lemon. The poison was in it." "Who poured it?" "That is what you are here to find out, since Wolfe refuses to move." I examined the glass through the open evidence case. It was tall and narrow, with one dried lemon seed at the bottom. The remaining liquid had tested positive for aconitine. Fingerprints. Harper's, a waiter's, and Smudge's. Which waiter? We are working on it. The service corridor behind the ballroom connected the kitchen, reception room, staircase, and electrical cabinet. Anyone familiar with the house could have prepared the scene without crossing the main floor. The lights had not failed accidentally. Someone had loosened the main contact in the ballroom panel and attached a thin length of wire to the switch. Pulling it from the service corridor had interrupted the circuit for several seconds. When the wire snapped, the contact returned and the lights came on. "A planned darkness," I said. 4 seconds, Pearlie replied. The note said, seconds before his death. The orchestra's continued playing had not been planned by the conductor. He had assumed the lights would return immediately and continued through the first measures of darkness. But someone familiar with the program could reasonably have expected the musicians to keep playing. "Who selected the program?" I asked. "Evelyn Harper approved it," Kramer said. "The orchestra leader received it on Monday." "Who else saw it?" "The gala committee, household staff, Harper, and half the people who had business in the house this week." A prediction is less impressive when 20 people have access to the future. Kramer took me upstairs to Harper's private study. The room overlooked the gardens and contained a desk large enough to conduct a war. Victor Harper's portrait hung above the fireplace, which seemed unnecessary in his own house but consistent with his opinion of himself. 3 people waited there. Robert Ellis was 55, broad-shouldered, grey-haired and tense. He had served as Harper's senior business partner for 18 years. Richard Cole, whom I had seen at the gala, was a junior executive and handled public projects. Ellis handled the money. Daniel Harper sat near the window. He was Victor's nephew, around 30, dark-haired, handsome, and trying to look grief-stricken without losing dignity. Margaret Stone stood beside the desk. She was in her late 40s, with cool grey eyes and a dark suit. Charles Mason had handled publication contracts for Harper's memoir, but Margaret Stone was Harper's personal attorney and controlled his estate affairs. Kramer introduced me as though apologizing. Ellis said, "I have already answered police questions. You may improve with practice," I told him. Margaret Stone looked at Kramer. "Is Nero Wolfe representing anyone?" "He represents himself," Kramer said. "That is a full-time job," I added. Kramer began with Robert Ellis. He and Harper had argued 2 days before the gala over missing company funds. Ellis claimed Harper had transferred nearly $800,000 from a corporate reserve account without consulting the board. "Where did the money go?" I asked. "I don't know. You manage the company finances. I supervise them." Victor controlled several private accounts. "Did you accuse him of theft?" "I accused him of irresponsibility. Witnesses heard you threaten to expose him." Ellis's jaw tightened. "I intended to call a board meeting." "Did Harper threaten you?" "He said I would be removed before the week ended." "That gives you a motive." "It gives me an attorney." Margaret Stone did not react. Ellis had arrived at the gala at 8:40. He spoke with Harper twice, once in the library and once near the staircase. At 10, he went to the smoking room with 2 directors. Both men supported his alibi only until 10:08. "Where were you during the darkness?" Kramer asked. "Crossing the ballroom." "Near Harper?" "No." "Did you touch his drink?" "No." "Did you know he would use the west balcony?" "No." The answers were firm, but anger sharpened each one. Daniel Harper was next. He expected to inherit, but not as much as the newspapers assumed. Victor had placed most of his wealth in trusts and charitable foundations. Daniel received an allowance and expected control of several properties only after his uncle's death. "Had he changed the will?" I asked. Daniel looked at Margaret Stone. She said, "That is confidential. Your client is dead and someone poisoned him. Privilege survives death. People keep saying that as though murderers respect paperwork." Kramer leaned toward Daniel. "Did your uncle threaten to disinherit you?" Daniel hesitated. "We had a disagreement." "About what?" "How large?" "That is personal." "Then I will estimate loudly. $70,000. He said it softly enough to make the number seem shy. Harper had learned Daniel had used family property as security for private loans. He ordered him to repay the debt or leave the estate. "Were you at the gala?" I asked. "Yes, I did not see you. I arrived through the east entrance. I was helping with the auction." "Where were you at 10:15? "In the conservatory. Alone?" "For part of the time." "What part?" "The important part, apparently." Margaret Stone answered her questions with professional care. She had managed Harper's private legal affairs for 12 years. She knew the terms of his will, the details of his trusts, and the legal problems buried in his memoir. "Did the book accuse Robert Ellis of financial misconduct?" I asked. "It described disagreements." "Did it discuss Daniel's inheritance?" "Yes." "Did it contain information damaging to you?" Her eyes rested on mine. Every lawyer knows facts that could be misunderstood. "That sounds like yes wearing a hat." "It is no." She had been in the upstairs library shortly before Harper's death. She claimed he summoned her to discuss an amendment to his will. At 10:08, she left him and returned to the ballroom. "What amendment?" Kramer asked. "I cannot disclose it. You can disclose it to a grand jury. When one asks properly." Kramer's cigar moved. Margaret Stone did not. I asked whether she had seen Harper drinking mineral water. "Yes." A waiter brought it while we spoke. "Name? I do not know." "Description? Young, dark hair, white jacket." That covered most of the hotel and catering trades. "Did Harper drink from it in front of you?" "He took one swallow." "How did he react?" "He rubbed his lips and said the lemon tasted bitter." Kramer and I looked at each other. "Why did you not mention that before?" he demanded. No one asked. That is the sentence police officers most enjoy hearing from lawyers. A technician entered carrying a list of catering staff. No waiter admitted. Taking mineral water upstairs. The service tray had been left in the passage for several minutes, while the assigned waiter returned to the kitchen for lemon slices. Someone had added the poisoned glass during that interval. I spent the next hour questioning the household staff. The housekeeper had seen Robert Ellis leave the study angry on Wednesday afternoon. A footman had heard Daniel ask Harper for money on Thursday. Harper had dismissed him with enough volume to carry down the corridor. A secretary named Alice Grant told me Margaret Stone had collected sealed legal papers from Harper's office 3 days before the gala. She returned only part of them. "What was missing?" I asked. "I don't know. Mr. Harper kept a private file concerning his will and a second file marked Kent. That brought Samuel Kent back into the picture. Kent arrived at Harper Hall shortly after 3, escorted by Pearlie. He had spent the morning at the brownstone with Wolfe and had been sent out to answer questions in person. He looked worse than the day before. The second note remained in police custody, and Kramer treated him as a witness who might become something more interesting. We spoke in the library. "You told us the first note arrived Thursday afternoon," I said. "That was when I found it." "When did it reach your office?" He frowned. "I don't know. The anonymous manuscript came Thursday." "No, it came Tuesday. It remained in the submissions tray for 2 days. That was new." "Who found it?" "My assistant. Name? Julia Morris." "When?" "Thursday morning. She brought it to me after lunch." "So the note predicting Harper's death reached your office 3 days before the gala?" "Yes." "Why did you say yesterday?" "I said it came to my attention yesterday." "You allowed us to misunderstand." I was frightened. I leaned back. "Coincidence was already sick. You have now buried it." The manuscript had been delivered by hand on Tuesday between noon and 2. No one remembered the messenger. The lobby clerk had gone to lunch, and several packages were left on a counter. The manuscript bore the title The Final Witness, and the author name Alan Moore. "Did you read it?" I asked. "Only the first pages." "What was it about?" "A businessman who arranged his own apparent accident to frame an enemy." That was worth writing down. "Where is the manuscript now?" Kent's face changed. "At my office." "Are you certain?" He was not. We telephoned Kent and Barrow. Julia Morris searched the submissions room and Kent's office. The manuscript was gone. Kramer listened on another extension and used language unsuitable for publishing. "Who knew it existed?" I asked Kent. "Julia, Peter Grant and me." "Did you tell anyone connected with Harper?" "I telephoned Margaret Stone Tuesday afternoon about another matter. I may have mentioned an anonymous manuscript." "You may have." "I did." "What did she say?" "She asked whether it referred to Harper." Before Kent could explain, Margaret Stone entered the library. That conversation concerned a threat Victor had received the previous month, she said. You knew an anonymous manuscript had reached Kent's office before the note was discovered, I said. I knew something unusual had arrived. Why did you ask whether it concerned Harper? Because Victor had received 3 unsigned messages. Kramer moved closer. What messages? Stone's control slipped just enough to show that she had not intended to reveal them. Harper had received 3 brief warnings during the previous 6 weeks. Each concerned his forthcoming memoir. The first said, "Do not publish the financial chapters." The second, "A false history will reig a true ending." The third, "The gala will settle the matter." Where are they? Kramer asked. In my office safe. You kept them from the police? Victor ordered me to. Kramer said several things about orders from dead clients. I telephoned Wolfe from Harper's study. He had finished lunch and was willing to hear facts, provided I did not confuse them with conclusions. I told him about the poison, the doctored light panel, the mineral water, and the 3 principal suspects. Then I explained that Kent's note had entered the publishing office on Tuesday, 3 full days before the gala, though he had not discovered it until Thursday. Wolfe said, "Who knew the manuscript was in the office before the note was found?" Kent, his assistant Julia Morris, editor Peter Grant, and Margaret Stone knew something anonymous had arrived. Who removed the manuscript? Unknown. What is the significance of the title? The Final Witness? Yes. I do not know. Then you have supplied a label, not a fact. I told him the manuscript concerned a businessman arranging an apparent accident to frame an enemy. Wolfe made a sound of dissatisfaction. The note was not sent merely to warn Mr. Kent, he said. It was placed in a manuscript, so the manuscript itself would be remembered. But now it is missing, precisely. You think the murderer wanted it found and then stolen? I think someone wanted Mr. Kent to possess evidence before the death and lose part of it afterward. Why? To control what he could prove. I looked through the study window at the grey grounds of Harper Hall. Police cars stood in the circular drive. Reporters waited beyond the gates. Kramer wants to know who poisoned the drink. So do I. But the drink is only a mechanism. Determine what Harper intended to announce at the gala. He gave a charity speech. He intended another announcement. How do you know? The note predicted confusion following his death. Confusion is useful only when it interrupts something. Before I could ask more, he continued. Question the orchestra leader about changes in the program. Question the gala chairman about the order of speeches, and obtain Harper's planned remarks. The line went dead. The orchestra leader remembered one change. At 9 that morning, someone telephoned and requested that the final musical selection begin at 10:12 instead of 10:20. The caller claimed to speak for Margaret Stone. Stone denied making the call. The gala chairman produced a printed schedule. Victor Harper had been due to return to the platform at 10:20 for a second announcement. The subject was listed only as Harper Consolidated Succession and Charitable Trust. Robert Ellis would have cared about succession. Daniel Harper would have cared about the trust. Margaret Stone had prepared the legal documents. At 5:30, one of Kramer's men found a draft of Harper's planned remarks in a locked desk drawer. The final page was missing. The surviving text announced a reorganization of Harper Consolidated, the removal of an unnamed executive, and the transfer of several family properties into a medical foundation. One line near the bottom read, "Evidence of financial misconduct has been placed beyond the reach of those responsible." Kramer read it twice. "Ellis," he said. "Possibly. Or Daniel if the properties were his inheritance. Possibly. Or Stone if she prepared the documents. That is why Wolfe employs me. I can say possibly with a better suit." Kramer did not appreciate it. As evening settled over Harper Hall, the death changed shape again. It was no longer a balcony accident that happened to resemble an anonymous note. It was a poisoning arranged 3 days in advance, concealed beneath a staged fall, a failure of lights, and a rush toward the staircase. The note had named the place, the hour, and the confusion because its writer had known the order of events. Samuel Kent had possessed the warning before the gala, though he had not known it. Someone had written the future, hidden it in a manuscript, and waited for Victor Harper to die according to schedule. The impossible part was not that the note had predicted the murder. The impossible part was that the murderer had wanted the prediction preserved. Chapter 3. The author of the prediction. A prophecy is impressive until you give it to Nero Wolfe. Then it becomes a badly organized memorandum. On Saturday morning, the two anonymous notes lay beneath glass on Wolfe's desk. The first had described Victor Harper's death at the charity gala. The second promised another death after the police believed they understood the first. Wolfe had finished breakfast, spent 2 hours with the orchids, and settled behind his desk with beer. Inspector Kramer stood near the globe with an unlit cigar. A handwriting examiner named Nathan Briggs occupied the red leather chair. I was at my desk with copies of both notes and the internal schedule from Harper Hall. Briggs had spent the previous hour comparing the notes with samples from Samuel Kent, Robert Ellis, Daniel Harper, Margaret Stone, Laura Bell, Charles Mason, Richard Cole, Peter Grant, Julia Morris, and several members of Harper's household staff. His conclusion was short and disappointing. The writer cannot be identified from these samples. Kramer removed the cigar from his mouth. Cannot or will not, cannot. The lettering was deliberately controlled. Upright capitals, even spacing, limited pressure variation, no natural connections between letters. The writer avoided the habits that usually permit comparison. Left-handed, I asked. Possibly, but not necessarily. The paper may have been turned. The ink is common black fountain pen ink. The first and second notes were written by the same person, but I cannot match them to any submitted sample. Wolfe said. The writer disguised the hand but not the mind. Briggs looked at him. Handwriting examination does not identify minds. Then your profession has sensible limits. Kramer glared at Wolfe. But Briggs merely gathered his photographs. Before leaving, he added that the writer probably prepared several practice versions. The strokes were too regular for spontaneous writing. When the front door closed behind him, Kramer said, "We have poison, a rigged electrical panel, a tripcord, a missing manuscript, and 2 threatening notes." "What do you have, Grammar?" Wolfe replied. Kramer stared. Wolfe lifted the first note. "Victor Harper will die. He will fall. The lights will fail. Guests will rush. The orchestra will continue. The death will be called an accident." "I can read," Kramer said. "Then observe. There is no uncertainty." The writer did not say Harper might die, could fall, or would probably appear to suffer an accident. Every event is stated as a fact. The murderer was confident. Confidence alone is not enough. A murderer may control the poison, the cord, and the electrical switch. He cannot ordinarily control the conduct of 200 guests or an orchestra. Kramer said, "The guests ran because Harper fell. Predictable. But the orchestra's conduct was less so. It continued playing during the darkness, and for several measures after the fall. The writer knew the selection would be underway, and that the conductor had been instructed not to stop during a brief interruption." I looked at the internal schedule. That instruction was not in the public program. "No," Wolfe said, "nor was Harper's use of the West reception room, nor was the exact time of his second appearance." Kramer turned to me. "You were supposed to check that." I did. I took the papers from my desk and arranged them in front of Wolfe. The invitations announced a reception at 8, Harper's charity speech at 9:45, and dinner afterward. The public program contained no mention of a second address, the West Balcony, or a 10:15 movement through the house. The detailed schedule was another matter. At 10:10, Harper was to meet Margaret Stone in the West reception room. At 10:12, the orchestra was to begin its final selection. At 10:15, Harper was to cross the West Balcony, descend the grand staircase, and return to the platform. At 10:20, he intended to announce changes in Harper Consolidated and the family trusts. The timing matched the note. Kramer read the page. "Who had this?" "That took most of yesterday," I said. The gala committee worked from a general schedule. The orchestra leader received only musical cues. The caterers had meal times. The household servants knew room assignments, but not Harper's private movements. Who had the copies were prepared. I read the distribution list, one for Victor Harper, one for Margaret Stone, because she prepared the announcement documents. One for Robert Ellis, because the announcement concerned company leadership. One for Daniel Harper because family properties were being transferred into the medical trust. The fifth remained with Alice Grant, Harper's private secretary, who typed the schedule. Kramer's cigar returned to his mouth. 4 living suspects. 5, I said. Someone could have seen Harper's copy before or after his death. Who entered his study? Nearly everyone with a respectable coat. Wolfe said, that enlarges opportunity, not knowledge. The writer knew the schedule at least 3 days before the gala, when the note entered Mr. Kent's office. Kramer paced once across the room. Stone had the schedule. Ellis had it. Daniel had it. The secretary typed it. Any of them could have written the note. Or supplied the information to the writer, Wolfe said. I picked up the first note. There is another detail. It says the death will occur at approximately 10:15. The original internal schedule, typed on Monday, placed Harper's return at 10:20. Kramer stopped. But you just said 10:15. It was changed Tuesday morning. Alice Grant typed a revised sheet after Margaret Stone telephoned her. Stone said Harper wanted 5 minutes added to the announcement and taken from the private meeting. Did Stone admit it? She admitted requesting a revision, but claims Harper ordered it. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. When was the anonymous manuscript delivered to Kent and Barrow? Tuesday between noon and 2. So the note was written after the revised time was established. Unless the writer guessed that change, Kramer said. Stone knew the new time. So did Harper Ellis, Daniel, Alice Grant, I said. All revised copies were collected by messenger before noon. Whose messenger? Chauffeur, James Nolan. Could he have read them? He says they were in sealed envelopes. That proves only that he can describe envelopes. Wolfe reached for his beer. The note was not written by a distant enemy, he said. It was written by someone inside Harper's arrangements. Someone who knew not merely that he would attend the gala, but where he would stand, when he would move, and what would occur around him. Kramer looked at the second note. What about the promised second death? That threat serves another purpose. What purpose? To hasten the police and confuse the murderer's associates. It may also be intended to frighten a particular person into action. Who? The person who knows why the first note was preserved. Kramer muttered something and left to question Alice Grant and Margaret Stone again. At 1:15, after lunch, I drove to Harper Hall. Alice Grant received me in the private office beside Harper's study. She was 40, efficient, and looked as though she had slept badly, but refused to let anyone benefit from it. Her desk was arranged with exactness. Pencils in one tray, correspondence in another, and no object placed without permission. She confirmed that she had typed the revised schedule Tuesday morning. Who dictated it? I asked. Mr. Harper telephoned from his car. Mrs. Stone called afterward to confirm the wording. Did Robert Ellis receive his copy? Yes. Daniel Harper? Yes. Did anyone ask to see another copy? She hesitated. Seymour Kent's editor telephoned. Peter Grant? Yes. He said the publisher needed the time of Mr. Harper's announcement because it would include the memoir. What did you tell him? Only that the announcement would occur at 10:20, not 10:15. No. That removed Peter Grant from one detail, unless he got it elsewhere. Did you keep a draft? Alice opened a drawer and removed a carbon copy. At the bottom were 5 typed initials showing the distribution. VH, MS, RE, DH, and AG. One detail bothered me. Why was Daniel given the complete schedule? He was helping with the auctions. Mr. Harper ordered it. Did Daniel know what the trust announcement contained? I believe so. They argued after he received it. About the family properties? Yes. Where? In this office. Mr. Harper told him he would inherit an income, not control. Daniel said the estate belonged to the family, not a hospital. Did Daniel threaten him? He said Mr. Harper would regret humiliating him. That was useful but common. Before leaving, I asked whether anyone had access to Alice's typewriter Tuesday morning. Several staff members passed through this room. Did you leave the revised schedule exposed? For perhaps 10 minutes while I took it to Mr. Harper for approval. Where was the original? On my desk. Someone could have copied the time, but not all the note's details unless that person understood the route and electrical arrangements. I found Robert Ellis in Harper's business office downtown, he admitted, receiving the revised schedule, but denied reading more than the paragraph concerning the company announcement. You expect me to believe you ignored a private schedule, prepared by Victor Harper? I asked. I had no interest in music or dinner. You had an interest in being removed from the company. His face hardened. The announcement did not name me. The missing final page may have. I did not poison Victor. Did you know he would use the west balcony? I knew he would descend the main staircase. Why? Because Stone told me to stand near the platform at 10:20. 10:15. He looked at me. The announcement was at 10:20. That was the public time. Harper was to appear 5 minutes earlier. Ellis's answer had the sound of honest surprise, but sound is not evidence. Daniel Harper was easier to find and harder to hold. He was preparing to leave Harper Hall when I caught him near the east entrance. I have answered everything, he said. Not correctly. He denied reading the complete schedule. He had opened the envelope, seen that his uncle planned a trust announcement, and confronted him. Did you know he would cross the west balcony? No, the schedule said so. I read only the final section. That family habit of selective reading may affect the inheritance. He tried to pass me. I stepped aside only after noticing a healing scratch across his right palm. What happened? Broken glass at the gala. Richard Cole gave the same answer. There was considerable broken glass. Did you enter the service corridor? No. His eyes moved away before the word. Finished. Margaret Stone saw me last. She was in Harper's library reviewing papers with Charles Mason. She dismissed Mason and closed the door. You believe the note's author possessed my schedule, she said. Not yours. Harper's. I prepared the legal portion. You also ordered the time changed. Victor ordered it. Why? He wanted to speak with me before the announcement. About a new will. About several documents. Did they remove Ellis from the company? I will not discuss privileged material. Did they reduce Daniel's inheritance? Silence. That is 2 yes answers, I said. She rose. This interview is finished. Did you know the orchestra had been told to begin at 10:12? I approved the schedule. Did you know the ballroom lights could be interrupted from the service? Panel. No. Did you know Harper would carry mineral water upstairs? He always did. That makes 3 important details. She remained controlled, but her left thumb pressed hard against the edge of a folder. I returned to West 35th Street at 6:15. Wolfe was in the office after dinner, reading a book and pretending he had not been waiting. I reported Alice Grant's carbon copy, Ellis's reaction, Daniel's scratch, and Stone's knowledge. Wolfe closed the book. The note required 3 categories of information, he said. The schedule, Harper's habits, and the physical arrangements of the house. Stone had all 3. So did Daniel, who lived there frequently. Ellis visited often. Alice Grant managed Harper's movements and correspondence. 4 suspects. Not yet. Kent also had access through the memoir, and the missing manuscript may contain information supplied by someone else. So handwriting gave us nothing. It gave us deliberation. The author practiced concealment because the natural hand would be recognized by Kent? Possibly. The note was sent to him, not the police or Harper. The writer expected Kent to recognize the danger, preserve the warning, and involve me. That was an uncomfortable thought. You think the writer wanted Wolfe? Wolfe's eyes half closed. The note was not merely advance notice. It was evidence created before the murder. Its existence proves planning. Whoever wrote it either planned the crime or feared the person who did. I looked at the 2 sheets under glass, and the certainty. Prophecies are often merely plans written by their creators. Then the author is the killer, perhaps. But a person may know a plan without creating it. We must determine whether the note was a boast, a warning, or a trap. The telephone rang, I answered. A woman's voice said, Mr. Goodwin, this is Alice Grant. Someone has entered Mr. Harper's private office. Are you alone? Yes, leave the room and call the police. I cannot. Why not? Her breathing came quickly through the receiver. The person is still here. Then I heard a second sound, the scrape of a chair or a shoe against wood. The line went dead. I was already reaching for my coat when Wolfe said, "Archie." I turned. "Take Saul Panzer." The author of the prediction may be removing the next page. Chapter 4. A Trail of Preparation. Saul Panzer and I reached Harper Hall in 32 minutes, which was good driving by my standards and criminal driving by everyone else's. A police car was already in the circular drive. The front door stood open, and a uniformed officer was questioning a frightened maid beneath the chandelier. I asked for Alice Grant. "Upstairs," the officer said. "She is alive." That removed one possibility and left several unpleasant ones. We found Alice in Victor Harper's private office with Inspector Kramer and Pearlie Stebbins. She sat beside her desk with a blanket around her shoulders. A dark bruise had begun to form above her right temple. The office looked as if a careful man had searched it in a hurry. 2 drawers hung open. Papers covered the carpet. The filing cabinet near the window had been forced, and a small wall safe stood open behind a framed photograph. Kramer saw us and scowled. "Wolfe sent reinforcements." "He sent intelligence," I said. "Saul is the reinforcement." Saul nodded pleasantly. Kramer pointed toward Alice. "She surprised someone in here. The intruder struck her and escaped through the service stairs." "Did she see the face?" "Ask her." I pulled a chair closer. Alice's voice was steady, but her hands were not. "I came back because I remembered a file Mr. Harper had asked me to copy." The office door was unlocked. I heard someone at the safe. Man or woman? I could not tell. The person wore a dark coat and a hat pulled low. Height? About your height, perhaps shorter. That includes most of New York. The person turned when I entered. I saw gloves and a white handkerchief covering the lower part of the face. Then something struck me. Did the intruder speak? No. What was taken? She looked at the open safe. A folder marked HC Review. Kramer said Harper Consolidated. "What was in it?" I asked. Alice hesitated. "Mr. Harper had been examining company accounts." "For how long?" "Nearly 2 months." That interested Saul. He moved closer without making it obvious. Alice explained that Harper had begun requesting old ledgers, bank summaries, property agreements, and reports from subsidiary companies. At first, she assumed he was preparing to write of his memoir. Then he instructed her to keep the work secret from Robert Ellis and the accounting staff. "What did he find?" I asked. "I do not know all of it." He discovered payments to companies he did not recognize. Consulting fees, equipment purchases, land options, and maintenance charges. Large payments? Altogether, more than $1 million. Kramer stopped chewing his cigar. "Why did you not tell us this earlier?" "I did not know it was connected to his death." $1 million usually connects itself. Alice looked toward the scattered papers. "Mr. Harper told me he had trusted someone who had been stealing from him for years." "Did he name the person?" "No. He called the person our respectable thief." "Did he say when he would confront this thief?" "After the gala." The room went quiet. I said, "After his second announcement." "Yes. He intended to meet someone in this office after the guests left." "Who?" "I was not told." Kramer asked about the missing HC Review folder. Alice had prepared it from Harper's notes. It contained a summary of suspicious transfers, account numbers, names of companies, and copies of authorization forms. "Who knew the folder existed?" Saul asked. "Mr. Harper, Mrs. Stone and me, Robert Ellis." Harper asked him about several transactions, but I do not know whether he mentioned the folder. "Daniel Harper? No. Samuel Kent?" He saw some financial references in the memoir draft, but not the accounting records. Kramer looked at the forced cabinet. The intruder knew exactly what to take, or took enough things to make one theft appear exact, Saul said. Kramer gave him a look. Saul remained calm. That was one reason Wolfe valued him. A man could throw furniture at Saul and feel he had merely interrupted a thought. I examined the safe. There were no scratches around the lock. The door had been opened with the combination not forced. "You said only 3 people knew about the folder," I told Alice. "Mr. Harper and I did." "Margaret Stone?" Alice lowered her eyes. "She may have known it, Mr. Harper sometimes asked her to retrieve documents." "Robert Ellis?" "Not officially." The burglar had forced the filing cabinet for display, but opened the safe correctly. That meant the burglary was either the work of an insider or someone who had obtained the combination. Pearlie found a black button near the service stairs. It came from a heavy coat and carried no maker's mark. Since half the men in New York owned black coats, it was a clue with social ambitions but no immediate employment. Kramer ordered 2 officers to search the grounds. Saul and I began with Harper's papers. The surviving documents showed that Victor Harper had spent his final weeks peacefully preparing a speech. He had been hunting money. Subsidiaries of Harper Consolidated had paid large sums to 4 companies: Blue Ridge Services, Central Equipment Leasing, New World Consultants, and Granton Property Holdings. The companies appeared unrelated. Their addresses were scattered through Manhattan, Brooklyn, and New Jersey. Yet every payment had been approved through the same internal account. Who controlled it? I asked. Alice checked a reference sheet. Robert Ellis had executive authority. Victor also had authority. Margaret Stone approved legal transfers involving property. Daniel had no company position. That gives us 2 signatures and 1 lawyer. Saul examined a copied authorization. This signature is Harper's. Alice looked at it. It resembles his. He made the capital H differently. Saul placed another sample beside it. The difference was slight. Harper's genuine H began with a curved upward stroke. The question signature began straight down. Force? I asked. Maybe, Saul said. A good one. Kramer joined us. What have you got? Someone moved money using Harper's name, I said. That points to Ellis. Or to someone who wanted Harper to think it pointed to Ellis. Kramer disliked sentences with 2 doors. At 8:20, Wolfe telephoned. He had waited precisely long enough to make it clear that he expected us to report, not to seek comfort. I told him Alice was alive. The safe had been opened with the combination, and the missing folder documented more than $1 million in questionable payments. Who prepared the folder? He asked. Alice, under Harper's direction. Who had read it? Harper and Alice. Stone probably knew its contents. Ellis knew Harper was investigating. The memoir mentioned some financial suspicions. Did the anonymous note mention money? No. Did the missing manuscript? We do not know. It vanished. Then the manuscript may have been another version of the stolen folder. In fictional form, facts are often disguised as fiction when their owner fears a lawsuit. I looked across. The room at Samuel Kent's name, written in one of Harper's margin notes. Harper was publishing a memoir. Maybe he intended the financial chapter to expose the thief. Precisely. The gala announcement, the memoir, and the private confrontation were not separate acts. They were stages of pressure. Then the killer had 3 reasons to stop him. 1 reason in 3 forms. Wolfe told Saul to trace the 4 companies and ordered me to reconstruct Harper's actions during the previous 2 months. That may take time. You have already spent some. Use the remainder better. He hung up. Saul left for Manhattan. I stayed with Alice and worked backward through Harper's calendar. 7 weeks before the gala, Harper had met privately with an outside auditor named Harold Vance. 6 weeks before the gala, he had visited 3 banks without Robert Ellis. 5 weeks before the gala, he instructed Margaret Stone to examine the legal ownership of several subsidiary companies. 4 weeks before the gala, he ordered Alice to copy authorization forms and compare signatures. 3 weeks before the gala, he added a new chapter to his memoir called The Cost of Trust. 2 weeks before the gala, he confronted Robert Ellis about unexplained withdrawals. 1 week before the gala, he changed his will and prepared to transfer family properties into the medical foundation. 3 days before the gala, the anonymous manuscript reached Samuel Kent. The sequence was not a trail, it was a staircase, and every step led toward Friday night. Margaret Stone arrived at 9 after Kramer summoned her. She entered the damaged office, looked at Alice's bruise, and lost some of her professional calm. I told Victor this would happen, she said. Kramer pounced. You told him what would happen? That someone would try to recover the financial records. Who? He would not tell me. You knew about the stolen funds. I knew he suspected fraud. Why conceal it? Because he had not proved it, I said. He asked you to examine shell companies. Her eyes moved to me. How do you know that? His calendar. She sat behind the desk, perhaps from habit. Harper had given her the names of 4 companies and asked her to identify their owners. she found that all four were controlled through nominee directors. The legal papers led through layers of corporations and trusts until the trail disappeared. "Did you find any link to Robert Ellis?" Kramer asked. "His office approved many of the transactions." "That is not what I asked. No direct ownership link. Did Harper believe Ellis was the thief?" "He believed Ellis was involved. Believed or knew. Victor often treated suspicion as knowledge." Margaret said Harper intended to confront Ellis after the gala, but not alone. He had arranged for an outside auditor to attend and had prepared a demand for the return of the missing funds. "Where are those papers?" I asked. "They should have been in the HC review folder, now stolen." Her face hardened. "Then whoever took them knew their importance." I asked whether she knew the combination to the safe. "Yes." "Did you give it to anyone?" "No." "Did you enter this office tonight?" "No." "Where were you when Alice was attacked?" "At my apartment. My housekeeper can confirm it." Kramer did not look impressed. "Housekeepers are useful, but they are rarely born to satisfy policemen." "Why did Harper change his will?" I asked. Margaret's answer came slowly. "He believed Daniel had been discussing the sale of family land with an investment group. Victor intended to prevent him from obtaining control. That gives Daniel a separate motive." "Yes." "Did the will affect Robert Ellis?" "No." "Did the company reorganization affect you?" "It reduced my authority over several trusts." That was the first fact she had offered against herself. Kramer said, "You stood to lose control of millions. I served Victor, not the money. People say that most clearly when money is present." Margaret rose. "Arrest me or let me leave." Kramer let her leave, which irritated him more than arresting her would have. At 10:15, Saul telephoned from the brownstone. He had traced Blue Ridge Services to an accountant who had once worked for Robert Ellis. Central Equipment Leasing used a postal address rented by Daniel Harper's former college roommate. New World Consultants had paid legal fees to Margaret Stone's firm. Granton Property Holdings had transferred money into an account connected with Samuel Kent's publishing company. "That includes everyone," I said. "Almost," Saul replied. "Are the links real?" "The companies made small legitimate payments to each person or firm. The large sums went elsewhere." "Where?" "I am still following them." The thief had built a circle of suspicion. Every important person near Harper had touched one of the shell companies, but none appeared to control them. That was either clever theft or generous framing. By midnight, Kramer allowed Alice to leave with a police escort. I returned to West 35th Street. Saul Wolfe was still in the office, which meant the case had offended him enough to delay sleep. Fritz brought coffee for us and beer for Wolfe. The brownstone was quiet. Rain had begun against the windows, soft but persistent. Saul reported the corporate trail. The shell companies moved $1,300,000 during 18 months, he said. The funds passed through false contracts, then divided into smaller accounts. Someone took care to connect each company with a different suspect. "Who had the knowledge to arrange that?" Wolfe asked. Ellis understood company accounts. Stone understood corporations and trusts. Daniel knew some family properties. Harper's secretary had access to signatures and schedules. Someone at Kent's firm knew what financial material would appear in the memoir. Wolfe scowled. "A list is not analysis." Saul accepted that without injury. I gave Wolfe the timeline of Harper's investigation. When I finished, he leaned back and closed his eyes. "Harper prepared 3 weapons," he said. The public announcement would remove the thief's authority. The memoir would expose the fraud. The private file would support prosecution. "And the killer prepared the note," said. "Yes. Why warn Kent? Because the note was not intended to save Harper." Saul looked at him. "Then what was it intended to do?" "To exist before the murder. I understood part of it. So after Harper died, the note would prove the death had been planned." "Correct. That seems unhelpful to the murderer, unless it directed suspicion towards someone else." Wolfe opened his eyes. The anonymous manuscript described a businessman arranging his own apparent accident to frame an enemy. That suggestion was planted before Harper died. If the manuscript had remained, the police might have concluded Harper planned the scene himself, perhaps to accuse Ellis, and was accidentally killed by his own arrangement. But the manuscript disappeared because someone needed only the note preserved. The larger fiction became dangerous once poison was discovered. Saul said, "The killer wanted the prediction found, but not the explanation surrounding it." Exactly. I looked at the first note, under glass. The writer had not merely known the gala schedule. He had prepared the darkness, the poisoned drink, the staged fall, and the confusion. He had also prepared the evidence that the crime had been foreseen. "What does that gain him?" I asked. "A false author," Wolfe replied. The note was meant to be attributed eventually to the person Harper planned to accuse. Robert Ellis, perhaps. Harper's financial investigation made him the obvious target, but obvious targets are often selected rather than discovered. The telephone rang, I answered. A man's voice said, "Tell Nero Wolfe that the second prediction has been made." "Who is this?" "The person who knows what Harper found. Give me a name." The caller ignored me. "Tomorrow at noon, one of the people who entered Harper's office tonight will be dead." The line clicked. I repeated the message. Wolfe did not move for several seconds. Then he said, "Archie, call Inspector Kramer. Saul, determine where each suspect will be at noon." "And you?" I asked. Wolfe looked at the rain sliding down the office windows. "I shall consider a murderer who prepares not only crimes, but explanations for them." The first note had predicted Victor Harper's death because its writer had arranged every step. The second prediction was different. This time, the murderer knew we were listening. Chapter 5. The Mistake in the Future. At 9 the next morning, Nero Wolfe had 5 people guarded by the police, one anonymous murderer threatening to kill at noon, and a breakfast he considered inadequate because Fritz had served the mushrooms 3 minutes later than intended. Of the 3 problems, only the mushrooms produced an immediate complaint. I had spent most of the night helping Inspector Kramer arrange protection for everyone who might have entered Victor Harper's office before Alice Grant was attacked. Kramer placed officers outside the homes of Robert Ellis, Daniel Harper, Margaret Stone, and Samuel Kent. Alice remained at Harper Hall under guard. Peter Grant and Julia Morris were watched because of their access to the missing manuscript. Kramer also included me on the list, on the theory that I had entered the office after the attack, and anonymous killers often enjoyed technicalities. At 9:15, I sat at my desk in the brownstone watching Wolfe inspect the first prediction through a magnifying glass. The original note had returned from the police laboratory inside a transparent cover. Beneath the 6 clearly written sentences, near the lower fold, there was a faint 7th line. I had seen it before, but assumed it was an impression left by another sheet. The laboratory had used angled light and photography to make it readable. "After the fall, the guests will be gathered in the East drawing room." Wolfe read it again. Kramer stood beside the globe. "It changes nothing." "It changes everything," Wolfe said. Kramer took the cigar from his mouth. "The note predicted that people would be moved after a death. That is not astonishing. It did not predict merely that they would be moved. It named the room. Harper Hall has an East drawing room. Anyone familiar with the house could guess." "Why that room?" Kramer frowned. I answered, "Because I had been there. It was not part of the gala plan. The East drawing room was closed." Wolfe looked at me. "Why? It had been used for storing auction items, paintings, silver, and donated antiques. The public rooms assigned for guests after dinner were the ballroom, library, conservatory, and west reception room. Yet after Harper died, the guests were taken to the East drawing room." "Yes. Who made that decision?" I thought back to the confusion after the fall. The lights had returned. Harper lay beneath the balcony. People rushed toward the staircase. The police tried to clear space. "Margaret Stone," I said. "At least I think it was Stone. She told the household staff to open the East drawing room and move everyone there," Kramer said. "She was trying to keep the ballroom clear." "Then why that room?" Wolfe asked. "It was large enough. So were the library and conservatory. Both were already prepared for guests. The East drawing room was locked, partly filled with auction property, and absent from the event plan. Before the death, no one had decided to use it." Kramer's cigar stopped halfway to his mouth. Wolfe leaned back. "The writer of the note knew a decision that had not yet been made," I said. Unless Stone decided it before the gala and told no one. Then it was made, Kramer said. No, Wolfe replied. Mrs. Stone informed the police that she chose the east drawing room because the library entrance was blocked by frightened guests, and the conservatory doors had been locked from the garden side. Those circumstances occurred after Harper fell. Kramer looked at me. Did she tell you that? She told one of your men. It is in the statements. I found the copy on my desk. At 10:19 on the night of the gala, Margaret Stone had ordered the east drawing room opened. According to her statement, she chose it only after discovering that movement toward the library was impossible. A footman named William Reed unlocked the door. The note had been delivered to Samuel Kent's office 3 days earlier, Kramer said. Then Stone wrote it. Possibly, Wolfe said. Or the writer arranged the conditions that caused her to select that room. How do you arrange a woman's decision? By removing the alternatives. That was worth sitting straighter for. Wolfe instructed me to telephone Harper Hall and ask whether the library entrance had been obstructed accidentally. Alice Grant answered. She had recovered enough to resume giving orders, which was encouraging. The library doors were blocked by 2 serving tables, she said. The staff moved them there after the charity auction. Who ordered that? I don't know. They were supposed to remain near the west wall. And the conservatory? The garden doors were locked because one of the keys disappeared. When? During the gala. Who reported it? The head. Gardner. He found the doors locked at 10:17. Could guests have used the main conservatory entrance? Not safely. A display stand had fallen in front of it during the darkness. Fallen by itself? It was unstable. Most useful objects become unstable when a murderer requires them to. I told her to find William Reed, the footman who had opened the east drawing room, and keep him available. Then I called the orchestra leader. He remembered that shortly before the lights failed, a member of the gala staff had told 2 waiters to place empty serving tables outside the library. Who gave the instruction? I asked. A woman. Description, dark dress, fair or grey hair. He did not see her clearly. Margaret Stone had dark hair touched with grey. Alice Grant had brown hair. Laura Bell had dark hair. Half the women at the gala fit the description if viewed from a ballroom full of champagne. Wolfe listened without interruption. The note did not foresee the use of the east drawing room, he said. The writer created a narrow path toward it. The library was blocked. The conservatory was made inaccessible. The ballroom had to be cleared for the doctor and police. The west reception room was part of the crime scene. Only the east drawing room remained. Kramer said, "That still points to Stone. She gave the order. Or she completed a sequence prepared for her. Why would the killer care where the guests went?" Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "That is the question." The telephone rang at 10:12. Saul Panzer had spent the morning tracing the shell companies and the movements of the suspects. "I found another connection," he said. The east drawing room held the charity auction items, including 3 locked document cases donated by Harper Consolidated. "Documents?" I asked. "Historical company papers meant for a museum exhibit." One case was empty when the police inventoried the room after the gala. What had been in it? Old board minutes, property deeds, and several private account ledgers. I looked at Wolfe. "Harper's financial evidence? Possibly," Saul said. "Alice Grant says Harper added 1 sealed packet to the display on Friday afternoon. He did not identify it. Who knew? Margaret Stone saw him. Robert Ellis may have. The auction curator signed the inventory." "Where is the packet?" "Missing." I repeated the conversation for Kramer. Wolfe closed his eyes. The guests were not moved to the east drawing room merely to remove them from the ballroom, he said. They were moved there to provide concealment. "For a theft?" Kramer asked. "Yes. 200 frightened people entering a room make excellent cover. A glass case can be opened, a packet removed, and any witness will remember only confusion," I said. "The note predicted the crowd because the crowd was part of the plan." "Precisely." Kramer paced toward the bookshelves. "The killer poisoned Harper, rigged the lights, arranged the fall, blocked 2 rooms, forced the guests into the east drawing room, and stole a packet while everyone was looking elsewhere." "An ambitious evening," I said. It required preparation, Wolfe replied. The note is a record of that preparation. Kramer turned. Then whoever stole the packet wrote the note. Likely, but not certain. An accomplice could have written it. Why send it to Kent? To create advance evidence of the crime and direct attention toward Harper's memoir. The writer wanted investigators to connect the death to information scheduled for publication. The financial chapters, I said. Yes. If the note were eventually attributed to Robert Ellis, his motive would appear complete. He faced exposure, loss of office, and prison. The murderer prepared not only Harper's death, but a persuasive suspect, Kramer said. Ellis had the event schedule and knew the financial investigation. He did. He could arrange the rooms. Could he? That stopped Kramer again. Wolfe instructed me to obtain the staff authority list for the gala. Only 4 people could issue changes to room use without approval. Victor Harper, Margaret Stone, Alice Grant, and Daniel Harper, who served as family host. Robert Ellis had no authority over the household staff. He could have bribed someone, but the neatness of the room changes suggested a person whom servants obeyed without question. At 10:45, Kramer left for Harper Hall. I went with him. Saul met us there. The east drawing room looked innocent in daylight. It was long and high-ceilinged, with pale walls, covered furniture, and temporary display tables arranged around the edges. A glass case near the fireplace stood empty. William Reed, the footman, waited beside it. "Who told you to unlock the room?" Kramer asked. "Mrs. Stone." "When?" "Immediately after Mr. Harper fell." "Did she say why?" "She said the police needed the ballroom cleared." "Did anyone enter before the guests?" Price hesitated. "A person from the staff came in about 5 minutes earlier." "Who?" I thought it was Miss Grant. Alice stood near the door. "I was in the ballroom." Price looked at her. "The woman was wearing your staff badge." Alice's badge had disappeared during the evening and was found the next morning beneath a serving table. "What did the woman do?" I asked. She said Mr. Harper wanted the display cases checked before the room was opened. She went to the case by the fireplace. "Face?" I saw only the side. "Dark hair." "Margaret Stone?" "No." "Younger? Laura Bell?" "Possibly." "Julia Morris?" "I do not know her." The false staff member had entered before Harper's fall, while the room was still locked to guests. She had prepared the document case for quick access or removed the packet then. The later crowd concealed the fact that the display had been disturbed. Wolfe's point grew teeth. The writer had known the guests would enter the room because the writer had arranged that they would have nowhere else to go. At 11:20, we gathered the principal suspects in Harper's library. Robert Ellis arrived from his office under police escort. Daniel Harper came from the East Wing. Margaret Stone entered, carrying a legal folder. Laura Bell had been interviewing household staff for the unfinished memoir. Samuel Kent and Peter Grant came from the city after Kramer summoned them. The noon threat hung over the room. At 11:30, Kramer placed officers at both doors. No one was permitted to leave. I watched faces. Ellis was angry, Daniel was frightened, and trying to make it look like boredom. Stone was controlled. Laura Bell observed everyone. Kent looked ill. Peter Grant looked offended by the furniture. Kramer told them about the East drawing room sentence. Margaret Stone said, "I made the decision after Victor fell." "That is the problem," I replied. "The note was written 3 days earlier." She read the line twice. "I never saw this." "Who knew you would choose the East room?" Kramer asked. "No one. I did not know myself." "Someone did." "No," Wolfe said through the telephone on the library desk. "We had called him from the brownstone and placed the receiver on a stand. Someone knew you would be compelled to choose it." Everyone looked toward the telephone. It was not the most dramatic entrance Wolfe had ever made, but he had the advantage of being the only man in the room, not threatened with death at noon. Wolfe explained the blocked library, locked conservatory, and missing packet. Robert Ellis said, "Then the murderer wanted the financial records." "Yes," Wolfe replied. "That proves Harper found the thief. It proves the thief feared what Harper found." Daniel said, "Why write the note at all? To write the crime into existence before committing it? That makes no sense. It makes excellent sense if the note is later discovered among the papers of the person intended to take the blame." The clock on the mantel showed 11:44. Kramer began searching bags, briefcases, and pockets. No weapon appeared, and no one carried poison. At 11:50, a telephone rang in the hall. Pearlie answered, then entered. "A package has arrived for Mr. Kent." Samuel Kent stared. "Here?" The package had been left at the gate by a taxi driver. It was wrapped in brown paper and addressed in the same upright lettering as the notes. Kramer opened it carefully. Inside was the missing manuscript, the final witness. A narrow strip of paper marked one page. "At noon, the man who first received the prediction will pay for failing to understand it." Kent's face went white. The clock showed 11:55. Kramer ordered everyone away from Kent. A doctor was called. The room was searched again. Kent's clothing, chair, water glass, and papers were examined. Nothing. At 11:59, Wolfe's voice came from the telephone. "Archie, remove Mr. Kent's wristwatch." Kent looked at it. "Why?" I took his arm before he could object. The watch had been a gift from Harper's publishing committee, presented at the gala rehearsal on Thursday. The back casing was unusually thick. Kramer's technician opened it. Inside was a tiny glass capsule connected to the winding stem. Turning the stem beyond a certain point would crush the capsule and drive a needle through the back of the watch into the wrist. The capsule contained a clear liquid. Kent had been preparing to wind the watch at noon, as he did every day. Kramer carried it away for testing. The clock struck 12. "Samuel Kent remained alive," Wolfe said. "The second prediction failed because we interrupted the mechanism. The first succeeded because no one understood that the prediction described machinery, not destiny." Kent sat heavily. "Who gave me the watch?" "According to the presentation list, Margaret Stone arranged the gifts. Alice Grant collected them. Peter Grant delivered yours. Laura Bell selected the engravings. 4 hands had touched the future." Wolfe's voice remained calm. "The field has narrowed. The murderer had access to Harper's private schedule, authority or disguise, sufficient to alter the use of rooms, knowledge of the financial investigation, access to Mr. Kent's office, and an opportunity to prepare the watch." Kramer said, "That is still several people." For the moment, I looked at the faint sentence on the photographed note. "After the fall, the guests will be gathered in the east drawing room." The writer had made one mistake. He had described a decision before anyone had supposedly made it, but it was not really a mistake in predicting the future. It was a mistake in revealing who had organized it. Chapter 6, The Hidden Fraud. At 12:05. Samuel Kent was still alive, which disappointed the author of the second prediction and pleased everyone else. The poisoned wristwatch lay inside a metal evidence box on the library table at Harper Hall. Inspector Kramer stood over it with the expression of a man who had just been introduced to a new form of dishonesty and did not approve of innovation. The laboratory technician had confirmed that the glass capsule contained aconitine. Had Kent wound the watch as usual, the hidden needle would have entered his wrist and delivered enough poison to kill him within minutes. Kent sat near the fireplace, with a policeman on either side. He had removed both sleeves from his awareness and kept staring at his left wrist as if it had betrayed him. Robert Ellis stood near the window. "That watch proves nothing against me," he said. No one had accused him yet, which made the remark worth keeping. Kramer turned. "Who said it did?" Ellis's face hardened. "You have been treating me as a murderer since yesterday. We treat everyone according to promise." Margaret Stone remained beside the long table. Daniel Harper had taken the chair farthest from the poisoned watch. Laura Bell stood quietly near the bookshelves, watching Ellis. Peter Grant had stopped complaining about police methods and was now interested in remaining alive. Wolfe's voice came through the telephone on the desk. "Archie." "Yes, take Mr. Ellis to his office." Ellis looked toward the telephone. "Why?" "Because Mr. Panzer has found something there that requires explanation." Ellis's eyes changed, not much, but enough. Kramer picked up the receiver. "Wolfe, if Panzer entered an office without authority, I will put him in a cell. You may discuss lodging with him later. At present, send Mr. Goodwin and Sergeant Stebbins." "What did he find?" "An account that does not enjoy being found." Wolfe disconnected. Ellis said, "I am not going anywhere without my attorney." Margaret Stone looked at him. I am Victor Harper's attorney, not yours. That seemed to surprise him more than the watch. Kramer sent Pearlie and me with Ellis. A police car took us downtown while Ellis sat in the rear seat and maintained the silence of a man calculating which words had already become expensive. Harper Consolidated occupied 6 floors of a stone building near Wall Street. Ellis's office was on the top floor, with tall windows, dark furniture, and a view of several banks he had apparently treated as invitations. Saul Panzer waited beside an open filing cabinet. A company accountant named Owen Mercer sat in a chair near the wall. He was small, bald, and so pale that his collar looked darker than his face. Ellis stopped inside the door. "What is this?" Saul nodded toward the accountant. "Mr. Price asked to speak with the police after hearing about Victor Harper's investigation." Ellis looked at Price. "You had no authority to open these files." Price swallowed. "Mr. Harper ordered me to keep copies." "Copies of what?" "The reserve transfers." Ellis took one step toward him. Pearlie moved between them. Saul placed 3 ledgers on the desk. The first was an official company book, showing payments for equipment, property development, consultants, and transportation. The second was a private list of account numbers in Ellis's handwriting. The third contained transfers from Harper Consolidated into the 4 shell companies we had already traced: Blue Ridge Services, Central Equipment Leasing, New World Consultants, Granton Property Holdings. The large payments had not ended there. Money moved from those companies into smaller accounts, then into investment funds controlled through 2 nominee directors. The final owner was a private holding company called Ellis Management Trust. "That is not mine," Ellis said. Saul opened a folder. "It was formed 9 years ago. The trust document names your sister as beneficiary and you as administrator. My sister has investments. Your sister died 7 years ago." Ellis said nothing. Price stared at the carpet. Saul continued. "After her death, you retained control. During the last 4 years, more than $1,300,000 from Harper Consolidated reached the trust." Ellis removed his gloves carefully and placed them on the desk. "Victor authorized private investments." "Not these," Price said. Ellis looked at him. The accountant's voice shook, but he continued. "Mr. Harper asked me to compare his original approvals with the bank records. The amounts had been changed after he signed them. 50,000 became 150,000. 30,000 became 80. Additional pages were added to contracts." "By whom?" I asked. Price looked at Ellis. "Mr. Ellis brought the documents back from Mr. Harper's office." Ellis laughed once. "You expect the police to believe a frightened clerk trying to protect himself." Pearlie said, "They often do when the papers agree." I examined one authorization. Harper had approved $40,000 for equipment repairs. A second 0 had been inserted, making the amount $400,000. The handwriting expert would have work, but the ink already looked different. "Why did Harper not notice?" I asked. Price answered. "The money was divided among several invoices. Some payments looked like legitimate costs. Mr. Ellis controlled the monthly summaries." Ellis walked toward his desk, but Pearlie stopped him again. "You cannot hold me here," Ellis said. "We can improve on here," Pearlie replied. Saul handed me a narrow appointment book found in the rear compartment of the cabinet. Several pages had been removed, but one surviving entry was enough. Tuesday, 11:30, K&G revised program. Another read, Friday, 90:50, water tray, West Passage, the Friday of Harper's death. "What are K&G?" I asked. Ellis's mouth tightened. Saul said, "Kent and Gala, perhaps." "Or Kitchen and Gifts," I said. The poisoned watch had been part of the Gala gifts. Pearlie telephoned Kramer while he reported. I questioned Price. Harper had first suspected fraud 8 weeks earlier, when a bank requested confirmation of a property transfer he did not remember approving. He quietly hired an outside auditor, then asked Price to gather copies without alerting Ellis. 2 weeks later, Harper confronted Ellis about 3 transactions. Ellis claimed the discrepancies were clerical errors. "They argued in this office," Price said. "Mr. Harper told him he had until after the Gala to return the money." "Why after the Gala?" "He intended to announce a company reorganization first, Mr. Ellis would lose authority over every account." "What did Ellis say?" Price looked toward him. "He said Mr. Harper would never make the announcement." Ellis spoke sharply. That is a lie. Price flinched. I said, did Harper prepare evidence? Yes. The HC review folder. He also sealed copies inside the display packet for the East drawing room. That explained why the packet had been stolen. Who knew where he placed it? Mr. Harper told me. Mr. Ellis may have heard. He was outside the office when we discussed the auction case. Ellis said, I was not. Price's hands closed together. You came in immediately afterward and asked what we had been discussing. The evidence was moving steadily toward Robert Ellis. It had motive, money, access, preparation, and a witness. It only lacked the courtesy of presenting a signed confession. Kramer arrived at 1:20 with 2 detectives and a warrant. He searched Ellis's office, private washroom, storage cabinet, and wall safe. The safe contained $40,000 in cash, 2 false passports, and a bundle of correspondence with banks in South America. Kramer held up one passport. Planning a holiday? Ellis's face had become wooden. I travel for business. Under the name Edward Allen. My attorney will answer. The attorney who just refused the job? Ellis said nothing. A technician examined the desk drawers and found a small bottle of machine oil, black cord matching the strand recovered from the balcony, and 2 spare staff badges from Harper Hall. One badge carried Alice Grant's name. The other was blank. That put Ellis or someone using his office inside the East drawing room before Harper's death. Kramer turned to Pearlie. Take him. Ellis finally lost some control. This is absurd. Anyone could have put those things here. Anyone with your safe combination? The cord is ordinary. The badge was probably sent with gala materials. And the poisoned watch? I asked. He looked at me. I never touched it. You arranged the company gifts. No. Margaret Stone arranged them. She approved them. Peter Grant delivered Kent's watch. But your office paid the maker. That came from a payment record Saul had found in the shell company ledger. Central Equipment Leasing had paid a precision instrument company for 6 custom watch cases and a concealed spring mechanism. Ellis stared at the ledger. The company makes presentation pieces, he said. It also makes laboratory instruments, Saul replied. Kramer read Ellis his rights. Ellis listened with his jaw clenched, then demanded an attorney who represented only him. Before he was taken away, he looked at Owen Mercer. You have destroyed your career. Price lifted his head. You destroyed Mr. Harper. Ellis did not answer. At 3:30, I returned to the brownstone with Saul. Wolfe was in the office after lunch, his eyes closed and his fingers resting on the arms of his chair. A bottle of beer stood on the desk beside a glass, holding exactly the amount he preferred. I gave him the whole report. When I finished, he opened his eyes. Mr. Ellis controlled the shell companies, he said. Yes. He forged Harper's authorizations. Yes. He knew Harper intended to expose him. Yes. He possessed a service badge, black cord, a record of the water tray, and financial connections to the maker of Mr. Kent's watch. Yes. He had access to the revised gala schedule. Yes. And Inspector Kramer has arrested him. Yes. Wolfe frowned. You sound unhappy, I said. I am dissatisfied. With what? Ellis has brought his own rope and tied the knot. Too neatly. Evidence sums behaves. Not this evidence. Saul sat in the yellow chair. Ellis certainly committed the fraud. Certainly, Wolfe agreed. And he threatened Harper. Yes, he had access to the schedule and the house, undeniably. Then why doubt the murder? Wolfe reached for his glass. Because the anonymous note was sent to Samuel Kent. I waited. When nothing else came, I said, that fact has been available since Chapter 1. Wolfe ignored the remark. Mr. Ellis knew Harper's private schedule, he said. He could arrange the poison, darkness, and trip cord. He could block the library and conservatory and use a false badge to enter the East drawing room. But why place an advanced description of the crime inside a manuscript at Kent's publishing office? To frame him later, no evidence points toward Mr. Kent as Harper's killer. To make the murder look like a prophecy, that gains nothing. To prove premeditation and point toward the memoir's financial chapters, perhaps. Yet if Mr. Ellis wanted the note preserved, why was the manuscript later stolen? Because the manuscript said too much. By whom? Ellis. Then, why return it before the second prediction? I leaned back. The missing manuscript had been delivered to Harper Hall shortly before noon. It contained the poisoned watch warning. Whoever returned, it had known where every suspect was being held and had arranged a taxi delivery, while Ellis was under police observation at his office. "What time did Ellis reach Harper Hall today?" Wolfe asked. 11:20. "What time was the package given to the taxi driver?" I called Kramer. He checked with the officer investigating the delivery. The taxi driver had collected the parcel at 11:35 from a woman outside Kent and Barrow's building. Ellis had been at Harper Hall surrounded by police when the package entered the taxi. When I reported that, Wolfe grunted. "An accomplice," I said. "Possibly. Or someone is framing Ellis. Also possible. But the fraud is real." "Yes. The murderer found a genuine criminal and built the case upon him. That was an unpleasant improvement," Saul said. "The appointment book and evidence in Ellis's office could have been planted. The ledgers could not," Wolfe replied. "Mr. Ellis stole the money, but the black cord, staff badges, and watch payment may have been placed where discovery was inevitable." "Who had access to his office?" I asked. "Employees, Mr. Price Harper, and anyone admitted by Mr. Ellis's secretary." Learn I went back downtown. Ellis's secretary, Helen Ward, had worked for him 6 years. She remembered several visitors during the week before the gala. Margaret Stone came Monday with trust papers. Daniel Harper came Tuesday asking about his allowance. Alice Grant delivered the revised gala schedule Tuesday morning. Samuel Kent's editor, Peter Grant, came Wednesday to discuss the memoir's financial chapter. Laura Bell came Thursday with questions about Harper's early company history. Any one of them could have entered Ellis's office while the secretary fetched coffee or carried papers. "Who used the rear filing cabinet?" I asked. "Ellis only." "Was it locked?" Usually is a door without hinges." She admitted the cabinet had remained open on Thursday after Ellis left for a board meeting. Laura Bell had been alone in the office for perhaps 4 minutes. That gave her opportunity to plant the cord and badges, though not motive. At Kent and Barrow, I questioned Julia Morris about the taxi package. She had seen a woman in a dark coat leave the submissions entrance shortly before 11:30. The woman carried a brown parcel. Could it have been Laura Bell? Possibly. Margaret Stone? Possibly. Alice Grant? Possibly. She was a generous witness. Peter Grant had been in Harper Hall under police guard. Samuel Kent was also there. Margaret Stone, Laura Bell, and Alice Grant had all moved through the estate that morning, but only Laura left for the city at 10:30, claiming she needed notes from the publishing office. I found Laura in a small room at Kent and Barrow, sitting beside the missing manuscript. The police had returned it after checking the package. "You were here before noon," I said. "Yes. You did not mention it." No one asked. That sentence had become fashionable. "Did you give the manuscript to the taxi driver?" "No." "Did you see who did?" "No." "You were alone in Ellis's office on Thursday for a few minutes. Did you put a staff badge or black cord in his filing cabinet?" Her eyes sharpened. "No." "Did you know he had stolen from Harper?" "I suspected it." "How?" "Victor dictated part of the memoir to me. He described a trusted associate who had diverted money through false companies." "Did he name Ellis?" "Not in the manuscript, but—" "You understood." "Yes." "Did you write the anonymous novel?" "No." "The final witness concerns a businessman arranging an accident to frame an enemy." "That sounds like a writer's work." "Many people can write badly." I liked her answer more than was useful. "Who knew enough about the memoir to create that plot?" "Peter Grant edited it. Samuel Kent read it. Margaret Stone reviewed legal risks. Alice Grant supplied company records. Ellis demanded changes. Daniel searched Victor's desk twice. Everyone again. When I returned to the brownstone, Wolfe was at dinner. I waited in the office until 9. He entered with the satisfied gravity of a man whose meal had behaved. I reported Laura's movements and answers. Wolfe listened, then said, "Mr. Ellis had access to Harper's location throughout the gala." "Yes." "His copy of the revised schedule was found in his desk." "Was it opened?" "Yes." "Any marks?" 2 times were circled. "Harper's first speech and the company announcement." "Not 10:15? "No." Wolfe's eyes half closed. The note specified 10:15. Alice could have told him, perhaps. But there is no proof he knew the revised movement time. He believed the announcement was at 10:20, as he told you. He might have lied. He might. Yet the murderer needed precise knowledge. Mr. Ellis had abundant motive and general access, but the note's author possessed intimate control of Harper's movements. So Ellis is guilty of fraud and possibly innocent of murder. Do not hurry. He may be guilty of both, but evidence that points steadily is not necessarily evidence that points honestly. The telephone rang. Kramer was calling from headquarters. Ellis wants to make a statement, he said. He admits the financial transfers. And the murder? I asked. He denies it. Anything useful? He says Harper told him 3 days before the gala that someone had sent a warning to Samuel Kent. I looked at Wolfe. Harper knew about the note before Kent claimed to have found it. Kramer continued. Ellis says Harper laughed and called it part of a publishing trick. Who told Harper? He would not say. I repeated that for Wolfe after the call. Wolfe's eyes opened. The note reached Kent's office on Tuesday. Kent said he discovered it Thursday, yet Harper knew of it by Tuesday or Wednesday. Someone at the publishing house told him, or Harper helped arrange it. That was a new direction, I said. You think Harper wrote a prediction of his own murder? No. But he may have known that someone was preparing a warning. The note might have been intended to protect him, not merely threaten him. Then the writer knew the murder plan and tried to stop it. Perhaps. And the killer stole the manuscript because it contained a clue to the writer. Wolfe leaned back. Mr. Ellis's fraud explains why Harper had to be silenced. It does not yet explain why the future was written down. The hidden accounts had given Robert Ellis the strongest motive in the room. His access to Harper's schedule had given him opportunity. His files had supplied cord, badges, and a trail leading to the poisoned watch. The evidence pointed at him so steadily that Inspector Kramer could follow it with his eyes closed. Wolfe kept his open. Chapter 7. Prediction equals preparation. Nero Wolfe did not object to an obvious answer because it was obvious. He objected when it arrived wearing too much evidence. By 10 the following morning, Robert Ellis was in custody for stealing more than $1 million from Harper Consolidated. His forged authorizations had been identified. His hidden trust had been traced. A false staff badge, black cord, and records connected with Samuel Kent's poisoned wristwatch had been found in his office. Inspector Kramer considered the case nearly finished. Wolfe considered it untidy. Kramer arrived at the brownstone at 10:15, carrying 2 folders, 1 cigar, and enough impatience for all 3 of us. He entered the office without waiting to be announced, placed the folders on Wolfe's desk, and remained standing. Ellis has been charged with fraud, he said. The district attorney is preparing the murder charge. Wolfe glanced at the folders. On what new evidence? We have enough old evidence to fill a truck. You have evidence that Mr. Ellis stole money. He also had the poison mechanism made. A company he controlled paid the maker. He possessed the cord used at the balcony. A common black cord was found in a cabinet, accessible to others. He had a stolen staff badge, also found in that cabinet. Kramer removed the cigar from his mouth. You spent 2 days telling me Ellis had motive and access. I still say so. Then what do you want? Proof that he authored the future. Kramer stared at him. I was at my desk with the 2 anonymous notes, the internal gala schedule, photographs of the East drawing room, and the restored manuscript spread before me. Saul Panzer sat in the yellow chair, calm as ever. Kramer pointed at the first note. It described the murder before it happened. Ellis planned the murder, therefore Ellis wrote it. That is a conclusion, Wolfe said. I asked for proof. You enjoy making a straight road crooked? No. I object when the road has been painted on a wall. The doorbell rang. Fritz admitted Alice Grant, Harper's secretary. She carried a flat document case and looked more composed than she had after being struck in Harper's office. I gave her a chair, Wolfe said. Miss Grant, you delivered the revised gala schedules on Tuesday morning. Yes. To whom personally? Mrs. Stone's copy went to her office. Daniel Harper's was left in his room. Mr. Harper kept his. Robert Ellis's copy consolidated. By messenger, by James Nolan, Mr. Harper's chauffeur. Saul opened his notebook. Mr. Nolan says he gave the sealed envelope to Ellis's secretary. Alice nodded. That would be correct. Did the envelope contain only the schedule? Wolfe asked. No. It also contained a draft of Mr. Harper's company announcement. Kramer looked at her. You never mentioned that. I was asked about the schedule. Kramer made a sound that expressed his opinion of witnesses, who answered only the questions asked. Wolfe said, "What did the announcement reveal?" That Mr. Harper intended to suspend Mr. Ellis's authority immediately after the gala. The board would be asked to approve an outside audit. Several accounts would be frozen. When was the announcement to be made? 10:20. And Mr. Harper's movement from the West reception room? 10:15. Therefore, Mr. Ellis knew the exact time. Yes, I said. His copy was found in his office, but 10:15 was not circled. Alice looked at me. The copy found in his office may not have been the original. That earned her the attention of the room. She opened her document case and removed a carbon sheet. Each schedule had an identification mark typed beneath the lower border. The police copy from Ellis's office carries the mark prepared for the gala committee, not the one sent to him. Kramer took it. The committee mark was G4. Ellis's personal copy should have carried R2. The copy in his desk was substituted, I said. After the murder, Wolfe replied. Mr. Ellis retained or destroyed the copy, proving he had the complete private schedule and placed a less detailed version where investigators would find it. Kramer turned to Saul. Where is the original? Saul produced a transparent evidence sleeve. Part of it was found in the furnace ash at Ellis's country house this morning. The lower corner survived. The charred fragment showed the identification mark R2. Above it, part of a typed line remained. 10:50 crosses west balcony. I read it and put the sleeve down. That gives him the time and the route, Wolfe said. It does not give him the east drawing room. Alice folded her hands. No schedule did. Wolfe looked toward me. I picked up the photographs from Harper Hall. The first showed the library entrance blocked by serving tables. The second showed the conservatory display stand lying across its main doorway. The third showed the locked garden doors. The fourth showed the east drawing room and the opened case from which Harper's sealed financial packet had disappeared. Wolfe said. The author of the note wrote that the guests would be gathered in the east drawing room. That decision did not exist before the tragedy. Therefore, the sentence appears impossible. Kramer said, unless Ellis arranged the decision. Precisely. Saul placed 3 receipts beside the photographs. The first came from the gala caterer. On Tuesday, Robert Ellis's office had requested 2 additional serving tables and directed that they be held near the library corridor. The second came from a locksmith. Central Equipment Leasing, one of Ellis's shell companies, had ordered replacement keys for the conservatory garden doors. The original key disappeared during the gala. The third came from a display contractor. On Thursday, an employee had been paid to loosen the fasteners beneath the conservatory stand that later fell across the entrance. Kramer read each document. He blocked the other rooms. Yes, Wolfe said. He did not predict that Mrs. Stone would choose the east drawing room. He arranged the house so she could choose no other room. Alice looked at the note. So, the line about the east room was not a guess. No, Wolfe replied. It was a record of preparation. Kramer sat in the red leather chair at last. Ellis wanted the crowd moved there so he could steal Harper's packet, or so someone acting under his instructions could take it amid the confusion. Who? The person wearing Miss Grant's stolen badge, Alice said. The footman thought it was a woman. He saw dark hair, a badge, and part of a face. Disguise does not require beauty, I said. You think Ellis entered the room dressed as a staff woman? Wolfe looked offended by my phrasing. I think a dark wig, an apron, and a badge were sufficient in a dim corridor filled with servants. Mr. Ellis was absent from the ballroom for 7 minutes before Harper appeared on the balcony. Kramer checked his notes. Ellis claimed he was in the smoking room. His 2 witnesses placed him there until 10:08. He did not return until 10:16. The west service stairs connect the smoking room corridor to the east drawing room. During those 8 minutes, Ellis opened the display case, completed the preparations in the service corridor, and triggered the ballroom blackout at 10:14. He returned to the ballroom after the lights came back on. But the drink? Kramer asked. Wolfe pointed toward a photograph of the water tray. Mr. Ellis knew Harper's habits. He arranged for the poisoned glass to be placed on the tray in the west passage. The appointment book found in his office contained the entry, Friday, 9:50 E. Water tray, West Passage. Ellis says the book was planted. Of course. Can you prove it was his? The paper contains impressions from the page formerly above it, Mr. Kenyon restored them this morning. Saul supplied the enlarged photograph. The impressions showed calculations involving the precise amount paid to the instrument maker who altered Kent's watch. Beside the total were Ellis's initials, written in the same natural hand found in his private account book. Kramer studied the photograph. That ties him to the watch. And to the second prediction, Wolfe said. I leaned back in my chair. That was your remaining objection. Ellis was under police guard when the missing manuscript was delivered. He did not deliver it personally. An accomplice? No accomplice was required. Saul placed another document on the desk. It came from a private messenger service called City Dispatch. On Tuesday, the day the anonymous manuscript first entered Kent and Barrow, a customer using the name Edward Allen had deposited 2 sealed parcels and paid for delayed delivery. The first was to be at the publishing office that afternoon. The second was to be collected on Saturday morning by a hired courier, carried from Kent and Barrow to Harper Hall, and delivered shortly before noon. Edward Allen was the false name on one of the passports found in Ellis's safe. The second prediction was scheduled before Harper died, I said. Yes, Wolfe replied. Mr. Ellis prepared it in advance, as he prepared the first. Kramer looked at the messenger receipt. Then, the woman seen outside Kent's building was only a courier. She received an envelope from a clerk who followed written instructions. She did not know its contents. That explains the package. It does not explain how the manuscript got back into Kent's office before the courier collected it, Saul answered. The manuscript was never stolen from the building. Peter Grant moved it from the submissions room to a locked editing cabinet after Kent showed him the note. Ellis knew the cabinet because he had visited the office to discuss Harper's memoir. On Thursday evening, Ellis entered Kent and Barrow using a temporary visitor card and removed the manuscript. Then he returned it. He placed it inside the second parcel when he deposited both packages on Tuesday. I said, then stopped. No, that would be before he stole it. Wolfe nodded. Exactly. There were 2 manuscripts. He lifted the copy recovered from the noon package. The paper in this manuscript does not match the paper used by Kent and Barrow for submitted work. Nor does it match the paper in the manuscript originally received Tuesday. Kramer frowned. How do you know? The first 10 pages were photographed by Miss Morris for the submissions record before the manuscript disappeared. Compare the typing errors. I had already done it. In the photographed original, page 3 misspelled separate as separate. In the returned version, the word was correct. A sentence on page 5 used 4 minutes. The returned manuscript said several minutes. The binding holes also differed. The second manuscript was a duplicate prepared in advance, I said. Yes, Wolfe replied. Ellis removed the original because it contained marks or material that could connect it to him. The duplicate had already been placed with the messenger service for delayed delivery. Kramer said, Why go through all that? To make the predictions appear mysterious. He wanted the police to spend time asking who could foresee events, whether the manuscript concealed a warning, and whether Harper had staged his own accident. That worked, I said. For a while. Alice Grant looked at the note again. Why send any warning if he wanted the murder to succeed? It was not a warning, Wolfe said. It was misdirection created before the crime. By placing the note in a fictional manuscript, Ellis suggested that the death belonged to a literary scheme, a threat connected with Harper's memoir, or a bizarre attempt to imitate fiction, Kramer said, but the note proved premeditation, against an unknown writer. Ellis expected the handwriting disguise and false author name to protect him. He also expected suspicion to settle upon Samuel Kent, Peter Grant, Laura Bell, or anyone connected with the book, I said. And if investigators looked toward Harper's financial enemies, they would find several shell companies touching Daniel, Stone, Kent's firm, and Ellis. He spread the money widely enough to stain everyone, Wolfe said. The false connections were another form of prediction. He prepared in advance what investigators would later discover. Kramer rose and walked to the window. So Ellis did not merely plan the murder. No, he planned the investigation. The sentence remained in the room. It explained the excessive neatness. The cord, badge, appointment book, shell company links, anonymous manuscript, delayed package, and poisoned watch were not separate clever tricks. They were steps in a route Ellis expected the police to follow. At the end of that route stood several suspects, and no Robert Ellis. But Harper had discovered the stolen funds sooner than Ellis expected. The sealed financial packet in the East drawing room had threatened to expose everything. Ellis was forced to act at the gala and could not remove every trace of his preparation. Kramer turned back. "You said the note became the strongest evidence against him." "Yes. The financial records are stronger. They prove theft. The note proves authorship of the murder." "How?" Wolfe placed the first prediction beside the gala receipts. The writer knew the lights would fail because he had arranged the switch. He knew the orchestra would continue because he had altered its instructions. He knew Harper would be on the west balcony because he possessed the private schedule. He knew the guests would enter the east drawing room because he had blocked every alternative. He knew the death would be called an accident because he had prepared the cord and darkness to conceal the poison. Wolfe tapped the note. Every sentence described an action controlled by Robert Ellis. The prophecy was not supernatural foresight. It was a checklist. Kramer said, "A defense attorney will say someone else used Ellis's preparations. Then we shall give him more." "What more?" Wolfe looked toward Alice Grant. The final page of Harper's announcement. Alice opened her document case again. "I found a carbon copy behind the drawer of my desk. The intruder took the original from the safe but missed the carbon. She handed it to me. The page named Robert Ellis. It described the false accounts, announced his removal, and stated that copies of all evidence had been sent to 3 protected locations. At the bottom, in Harper's handwriting, was an added line. "R.E. knows of Kent note. Watched him if he mentions East Room." I read it twice. Kramer took it. "Harper suspected Ellis wrote the note." "He did more than suspect," Wolfe said. "Ellis made a mistake when he tried to frighten him." Before Kent discovered the note, Ellis asked Harper whether the gala guests would be moved to the East drawing room after an emergency. Alice nodded. "Mr. Harper told me about the conversation. At the time, he thought Ellis was asking about safety arrangements. Later, Harper learned that an anonymous note mentioned the same room," Wolfe said. "He understood that Ellis possessed knowledge no innocent man could possess." "Why did Harper still attend the gala?" I asked. "Pride. He believed he could reverse the trap. He arranged to expose Ellis publicly, preserved copies of the evidence, and added the warning to his speech. He underestimated the poison." Kramer folded the carbon page. "This is enough to confront him." "Not here," Wolfe said. "Where?" "In this office tomorrow evening." Kramer gave him a long look. "You want the whole audience, Mr. Ellis constructed his crime for an audience. He may be dismantled before one. Will he come? He will be brought." Wolfe instructed me to summon Samuel Kent, Margaret Stone, Daniel Harper, Alice Grant, Laura Bell, Owen Mercer, and the relevant witnesses from Harper Hall. Kramer would bring Ellis and Pearlie. Saul would obtain the original messenger records and the surviving schedule fragment. I started making the calls. When I finished, the afternoon light had faded from the office windows. Wolfe sat motionless behind his desk, considering the note that had seemed to know the future. "All that mystery," I said, "and it was only a list of jobs Ellis intended to perform." "Not only a list. It was vanity." "How?" "He wished to demonstrate control. The note declared that events would occur exactly as written. Mr. Ellis mistook preparation for mastery. He came close. Close is a measurement used by failures." Wolfe reached for his beer. Robert Ellis had planned Harper's route, poisoned his drink, darkened the ballroom, blocked the public rooms, opened the East drawing room, stolen the evidence, and prepared a second death to deepen the illusion. He had written the future because he intended to manufacture it. But by recording each event before it happened, he had left behind something more dangerous than a threat. He had signed the plan. Chapter 8. Wolfe's final explanation. At 9 o'clock the next evening, Wolfe's office held 1 murderer, 3 people who had expected to inherit trouble, 2 publishers, 1 secretary, One accountant, 3 policemen, Saul Panzer, and me. Fritz had arranged the chairs, but no arrangement could make the company sociable. Samuel Kent sat near my desk, keeping his left wrist conspicuously free of watches. Daniel Harper occupied the yellow chair and looked tired enough to inherit honestly. Margaret Stone sat upright beside the bookshelves, a legal folder closed across her knees. Alice Grant and Laura Bell were near the windows. Peter Grant had chosen a chair behind Kent, perhaps hoping that an editor was less noticeable behind his publisher. Owen Mercer, the accountant who had preserved copies of Robert Ellis's transfers, sat nearest the door. Inspector Kramer stood beside Wolfe's desk with an unlit cigar in his mouth. Pearlie Stebbins remained near the hall. Saul had taken the chair by the globe. Robert Ellis sat in the red leather chair. Kramer had brought him from headquarters. Ellis wore the same controlled expressions he had used in his office, but control had become expensive. His face was pale, and his hands rested too carefully on his knees. The 2 anonymous notes lay under glass on Wolfe's desk. Beside them were the charred fragment of Ellis's private gala schedule, the messenger service receipt, copies of the false company accounts, Harper's final speech page, and photographs of the East drawing room. Wolfe entered at 9 precisely, crossed to his chair, and lowered himself into it. He looked around the office slowly. "Mr. Goodwin, are we complete? We have all the people who were invited and one who was delivered." Ellis looked at me but did not spend a reply. Wolfe placed his palms on the arms of his chair. Victor Harper was murdered because he discovered that a trusted associate had stolen more than $1 million from Harper Consolidated. That associate was Robert Ellis. Ellis spoke at once. "I have admitted irregular financial transfers. I have not admitted theft or murder. Your choice of nouns will not assist you." Kramer shifted his cigar, but Wolfe continued. "Mr. Ellis moved company funds through Blue Ridge Services, Central Equipment Leasing, New World Consultants, and Granton Property Holdings. From those companies, the money traveled through false contracts and nominee accounts until it reached the Ellis Management Trust." Daniel Harper looked at Ellis. "You used my college friend's company to connect you with the fraud," Wolfe said. "Mr. Ellis made small legitimate payments through people associated with each possible suspect. Mr. Kent's firm, Mrs. Stone's legal office, Mr. Harper's property ventures, and several company executives all appeared somewhere in the chain. If the theft was discovered, confusion would be plentiful," Ellis said. "Victor authorized private investments." Owen Mercer leaned forward. "He did not authorize the altered amounts." Ellis turned toward him. "You copied records you did not understand. I understood an extra zero." Kramer removed the cigar from his mouth. "Let Wolfe finish." Wolfe inclined his head a fraction. 8 weeks before the gala, Harper learned that money had been moved under forged authorizations. He hired an outside auditor, ordered Mr. Price to preserve copies, and instructed Miss Grant to prepare the HC review folder. He then arranged 3 forms of exposure. Wolfe lifted one finger. First, he intended to remove Mr. Ellis's authority in a public announcement at the gala. A second finger. Second, he intended to publish the financial history in his memoir. A third. Third, he prepared evidence and placed a sealed packet in the East drawing room. Ellis looked toward the photographs, but said nothing. Mr. Ellis learned of all 3, Wolfe continued. He therefore prepared 3 answers. Harper would die before speaking. The financial packet would disappear during the confusion, and an anonymous prediction would persuade investigators to look for something extraordinary rather than examine ordinary preparation. Samuel Kent glanced at the note beneath glass. "It was put inside the manuscript because of the memoir?" "Yes," Wolfe said. "The setting was chosen deliberately. A threatening note found in a crime manuscript suggested an author, an obsessed reader, a publicity scheme, or a danger hidden in Harper's book. It directed attention toward publishing people before the murder had even occurred." Peter Grant said, "The manuscript was written to support the note." "Correct. It was not a novel in any serious sense. It was a container." Wolfe indicated the first note. "The language is confident because the writer was not predicting possibilities. He was listing arrangements." He read from it. Harper would die at approximately 10:15 because his private schedule placed him on the west balcony at that time. The lights would fail because Mr. Ellis had prepared the electrical panel. The orchestra would continue because its instructions had been altered. Guests would rush toward the staircase because Harper's fall would occur above it. Ellis smiled without pleasure. Any person with the schedule could know those things. Not all of them. Wolfe moved one thick finger to the faint final sentence. After the fall, the guests will be gathered in the east drawing room. Margaret Stone looked at the line. That decision was mine, she said. I made it after Victor fell. Indeed, before the gala, the east drawing room was closed. The library and conservatory were the rooms assigned for guests. No existing schedule placed anyone in the east drawing room after 10 o'clock. Daniel said. Then how did Ellis know Margaret would choose it? He did not know what she would choose. He arranged what she could not choose. Wolfe nodded toward Saul. Saul placed 3 receipts on the desk. Ellis's office ordered additional serving tables and had them positioned near the library doors. One of his shell companies paid for replacement conservatory keys, after which the original key disappeared. Another paid a contractor who loosened the stand that fell across the conservatory entrance. Wolfe continued. The ballroom became a death scene. The west reception room and balcony became part of the police examination. The library entrance was blocked. The conservatory was inaccessible. Mrs. Stone had only one practical destination for 200 frightened guests. The east drawing room, Alice Grant said. Yes, its selection looked spontaneous, but its necessity had been manufactured. Wolfe looked directly at Ellis. You wrote that sentence because you had built the circumstances that would make it true. Ellis folded his arms. Receipts prove that my office paid suppliers. They do not prove I ordered murder. The note does. No handwriting expert matched it to me. You disguised the hand. You could not disguise the information. Wolfe picked up the charred schedule fragment. Your private copy of the gala plan contained Harper's 10:15 balcony movement. You destroyed it and substituted a committee copy, lacking that detail. The surviving corner from your furnace bears the identifying mark R2 and part of the line describing Harper's route. Kramer said, the laboratory has confirmed the paper and typewriter. Ellis glanced at him. A schedule is not poison. No, Wolfe agreed. Your appointment book supplies the drink. Saul handed Kramer the enlarged photograph of the restored impressions. The visible entry read, Friday, 9:50, water tray, West Passage. The impressions from the removed page above it contained a payment calculation for the instrument maker who had altered Kent's watch. Wolfe said, you knew Harper drank mineral water with lemon before speaking. You placed aconitine in the glass prepared for him. When the poison weakened him, the cord across the balcony entrance ensured that he would fall during the darkness. Ellis said, the cord was planted in my office. You planted evidence often enough to recognize the possibility, but this cord was purchased with maintenance supplies, billed through Central Equipment Leasing. Mr. Price found the invoice among records you ordered destroyed. Owen Mercer nodded. Ellis's fingers tightened against his sleeve. Wolfe continued. The fall was intended to hide the poisons. Harper had a history of heart trouble. In darkness, with a tripcord and a high railing, an accident would seem plausible. The note reinforced that expectation by declaring that the death would be called an accident, Laura Bell said, but the note also said it would not be one. To deepen the mystery, Wolfe replied. Mr. Ellis wanted the note to appear written by someone who knew of a murder but was not responsible for it, a watcher, an enemy, or an author. That would create a second invisible person for the police to pursue. Samuel Kent asked, why threaten me afterward? To sustain the illusion and destroy evidence connected with the publishing office. The second prediction also punished you for bringing the first note to Mr. Wolfe. Kent rubbed his bare wrist. The watch would have killed me. Yes, it had been altered before the gala, and its delivery had been arranged through the same network of false companies. The duplicate mask and delayed courier order were prepared in advance. Mr. Ellis did not need to leave Harper Hall to send the noon package. The future delivery had already been scheduled. Ellis turned to Kramer. "You arrested me before that package was delivered. That proves I did not send it." "It proves the opposite," Wolfe said. "The package was deposited days earlier under the name Edward Allen, the name on your false passport. Its timed delivery was another planned prediction." Kramer laid the messenger receipt on Wolfe's desk. Ellis looked at it, and his face lost another degree of color. Wolfe lifted Harper's recovered final speech page. "Harper knew you had written the warning. Before Mr. Kent officially discovered the note, you asked Harper whether guests would be moved into the East drawing room during an emergency. When Harper later learned that the anonymous note named that room, he understood that the question had revealed knowledge of your plan." Alice Grant said, "That is why he wrote the line about watching Ellis." "Yes." Wolfe read Harper's handwritten addition aloud. "R.E. knows of Kent note. Watch him if he mentions East room." Ellis stood. Pearlie moved away from the hall wall. Ellis said, "Harper could have written that after deciding to accuse me. He wanted someone to blame for his own thefts." "Sit down," Kramer said. Ellis remained standing. Wolfe's voice did not rise. "You stole the funds. You prepared the note. You altered the gala arrangements. You poisoned the drink. You removed the packet from the East drawing room while wearing Miss Grant's stolen badge. You then placed cord, badges, and misleading records where the police would find them among genuine evidence of your fraud." "That makes no sense," Ellis snapped. "Why would I place evidence in my own office?" "Because you intended some of it to be found later, after other clues directed suspicion elsewhere. You were interrupted by Harper's rapid investigation and forced to act before the arrangement was complete." Ellis laughed. It sounded thin. "You have no witness who saw me poison the glass." "No, but we have a witness who saw you remove the aconite." That was news to most of the room. Wolfe looked at Owen Mercer. Price swallowed. "The Tuesday before the gala, I saw Mr. Ellis take a small bottle from the laboratory cabinet in our equipment division. He told me it was cleaning fluid." Ellis turned on him. "You said nothing about that." "I was afraid." "You are lying. The bottle was entered in the laboratory inventory," Kramer said. "The signature removing it is yours." Ellis's right hand moved toward his coat. Pearlie reached him before he completed the motion. He seized Ellis's wrist and removed a small metal case from the inner pocket. Inside was a glass capsule. Kramer stared at it. "What is that?" Ellis stopped struggling. Wolfe said, "Mr. Ellis expected another opportunity. A man who constructs the future dislikes leaving it unfinished." The laboratory man waiting in the front room was called in. He tested the capsule and announced that it contained aconitine. Kramer stepped close to Ellis. "Who was it for?" Ellis looked from Kramer to Wolfe, then at Samuel Kent's empty wrist. His control broke without drama. His shoulders lowered, and the anger went out of his face. "Victor was going to destroy me," he said. No one answered. "He moved money whenever he pleased. He forced every decision and blamed everyone else when an investment failed. I took what I had earned." "You stole it," Kramer said. "At first I intended to return it, then the accounts grew." He found one transfer and began digging. He enjoyed it. He wanted me to beg. "So you killed him." Ellis looked at the first note. "I wanted them all looking for the writer. I wanted the death to seem like a story written by someone outside the house." "The East drawing room betrayed you," Wolfe said. Ellis's mouth twisted. "I thought that was the cleverest part." "It was." That answer surprised him. Wolfe continued, "Cleverness is not the same as safety." The sentence proved that the writer controlled events which had not officially been arranged. Ellis looked at Kramer. "I put the poison in the glass. I fixed the light panel. I tied the cord. I took the packet from the display case." "And Kent's watch?" Kramer asked. "Yes. Did you attack Alice Grant?" "Yes. I went back for Harper's review folder." Kramer nodded to Pearlie. The handcuffs closed around Ellis's wrists. As Pearlie led him toward the hall, Ellis turned once toward Wolfe. "You could not have known all of it." "No," Wolfe said. "You wrote down the parts I needed." After Ellis was removed, the room emptied gradually. Daniel Harper left with Margaret Stone to discuss the estate. Alice Grant and Owen Mercer went with Kramer to complete their statements. Laura Bell took the unfinished memoir, though I doubted the publisher would keep its original title. Peter Grant followed her. Samuel Kent paused beside my desk. I will never publish another prediction. Most publishers prefer memoirs after the subject is safely dead. He did not smile, but he shook my hand and left. Fritz entered to remove the glasses. Saul went home. Wolfe opened a bottle of beer and poured with the concentration of a chemist. I picked up the note and studied the upright handwriting one last time. A man tried to look like a prophet. Wolfe closed his eyes. No, Archie. He was merely a criminal who forgot that predicting a crime is often the same thing as planning it. The note had seemed to know the future. In the end, it had revealed the truth about the past.